Blog for the Blood God.
Hello everyone, welcome to this exciting live stream. We've got the new Chaos Space Marine Codex and I'm really keen to rip it apart with you guys, talk about the new detachments, the changes to unit abilities, and some of the exciting combos that we're going to be able to pull off with this fantastic new Codex. This is probably my third or fourth live stream, so I think I've got it all under control. I think I've worked out all the technology side of things. However, if anything does go wrong, make sure to let me know in the chat, and I'll be sure to fix it. I've got the chat down here in front of me. We've got some comments in there already straight out of the gate, so that's fantastic. We've got Jesus saying hello. We've got Wolf saying, yeah, boy. Hello from Spain. I'm not sure if that's Jesus or Jesus. It's got one of those little thingies over the U, so apologies if I've mispronounced that. But yes, welcome to the show. Welcome to the chat. Basically, the goal for today is I'm going to read through each data sheet first, and I'm going to just talk about the changes. So we'll go through that, and we'll talk about that and the impacts that that's going to make on army composition and stuff. Then we're going to go through each detachment and break it down in detail, talk about every stratagem, talk about every new ability, just talk about the whole thing, right? And I'll share my thoughts on it as an experienced Chaos Space Marine player and what I think this is going to mean for the meta. One thing I will say at the start is fill that comment section, and I'll try my best to get to all of them. I will probably leave the answering questions until after each section. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably just go through all the data sheets, and then after I've done that, I'll go through the comments and respond to people. And then I'll go through the detachments, and after each detachment, I'll then jump back into the comments and try to get updated. That being said, if there is a question that's pressing, that's on your mind, that you would really like to get answered, or if there's something that you don't want to get missed, you can use the super thanks to put it like a $1 donation, and that'll highlight that comment, and then I'll make sure that I definitely read and respond to that comment. So I imagine this is going to get pretty full on, and it's also going to be quite a long stream. So I may not get to every comment. So if you want to show your support for the channel whilst making sure that your comment gets read, the super thanks, or whatever they call it on YouTube, the donation button, that's the best way to do it. So yeah, with that being said, let's talk about a few things first. So the first thing is that I'm going to assume that the points costs are going to stay the same as per the balanced data slate for now, and then when the GW do their balance, like what they recently did with Tau, they'll probably change a few of these things. So the conversation is going to be more centered around like things like what the abilities mean and what the detachments mean, not necessarily about the power of any particular unit or any particular detachment, because that's subject to change, right? So we're going to talk about it based on the current points costs from the Ministorum Field Manual, because that's what tournaments use, that document. They don't use anything in codexes, they just use that document. And that document has, the current point costs. That means it doesn't have the Jump Pack Lord or the On Foot. It's got the On Foot Lord, but it doesn't have the Jump Pack Lord because he's a new data sheet. But we can assume he'll be, around the 100 to 125 point mark, I would assume. And yeah, so I guess there's nothing left to be said but to get stuck straight into it. So I'm going to pull up the data sheets now. This is going to be the format. Let me know if this little icon box with me, let me know if that gets in the way, or if it's annoying or whatever, and I can always move it. But the first data sheet we're going to look at is Abaddon the Despoiler. So my understanding is that the data sheets, the the stats themselves haven't changed. I had to scour through it last night. I've only had this for 12 hours, and I had to do some sleep in that time. So, my understanding is that the stats, the data sheet hasn't changed. The only things that's changed on each individual data sheet is the abilities, and there's been some pretty big changes. But so for this one, he still has his War Master ability, selecting one of the abilities to the left. This one, his Dark Destiny has changed. So now instead of generating CP with ease, he has to roll a 7+ on his Dark Pact test, which is nowhere near as likely. So he's not the CP regenerator that he used to be. The other thing people have noted is that he no longer has all of the different marks of chaos, and that's a huge nerf, because the biggest strength of Abaddon used to be putting him in that detachment, putting him in a unit in the detachment that had the marks of chaos, and that allowed him to get the lethals and sustained on 5+ across multiple different things. Now he obviously can't do that. However, most of the detachments, particularly some of the really good ones, actually gain 0 utility from marks of chaos. So, as a result, I don't think that's that big of a deal on Abaddon, because unless you're taking that previous detachment, you're probably not realistically looking at caring about what marks of chaos he has. And my understanding is the only other thing is that he no longer gives his War Master buffs to damned units, so that's the things like your cultists, I believe accursed cultists, those sorts of things. So no longer having a big cultist horde with 4-up invulnerable saves, that's gone. He now only provides it to Heretic Custodes infantry or mounted units, and not damned ones, which is interesting. But I believe that's more. The only other change with him is that he can now be attached to Chaos Terminator squads or Chosen. So no longer attached to Legionaries. He can now be attached to Terminators and Chosen, which in my opinion is how it should always have been. It didn't make much sense for the Chosen warriors on the battlefield to not be able to be accompanied by the leader, but the Legionaries, the battle line, the plebs, they could be. That didn't make a lot of sense. So I think that's a good change. That's a positive change. Overall, Abaddon got significantly weaker, losing their marks, not being as good of a CP regenerator. Those are negative impacts on him. But I still think he's very reasonable and very strong. Alright, let's have a look. I'm just going to quickly check the comments to see how many there are. Oh shit, there's tons. Yeah, there's lots of comments in there, so make sure if there's something that you want read promptly, put a donation on it. Even just $1 will highlight it on my phone, and then I'll make sure not to miss it. But for now, I'm just going to keep punching through because we've got a lot of data sheets to cover. So we've got Harkin. Again, my understanding is he hasn't changed at all. He does, however, join Raptors, who are really good in this new book, and he has the ability to give them a mortal wound hit when they charge, which is really cool. And he also inflicts battle shock tests, which one of the detachments leans heavily on that and is really, really good. Then we've got Vashtor. Now, Vashtor has changed a little bit. He now has, while friendly demon vehicle units within 6 inches, he adds 1 to the strength of their weapons. And each time an enemy unit within 18 of this model targets the model until the end of the phase, that enemy unit has hazardous. So that's really cool. I actually reckon there's a build using one of the detachments that makes Vashtor insane. Obviously, pending points cost changes, but at the moment, he has a really strong build that centers around him. Cypher is one that has had some very interesting changes that, in my opinion, make him significantly worse, but some people are arguing that it made him better, so let's talk about it. He now has Agent of Discord. Each time an opponent targets a unit from their army with a stratagem, if that unit's within 12 inches of this model, increase the cost of the use of that stratagem by 1 CP. Now, this is still affected by the recent balanced data slate update that basically said that anytime you're trying to modify the cost of a CP, it only affects battle tactics. So it's not quite the same as before, but it's not limited to 1. So basically, it used to be you'd pick 1 stratagem that they use, and it would go up by 1. Whereas now it's any stratagem that they use, as long as they're within 12 inches of him. the good thing about this compared, so the previously, most people only really have like one good battle tactic stratagem anyway, and you want to be able to just pick it when they use it, and then it doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter if Cypher's dead. It's like it's been affected by his ability. So for the rest of the game, it's going to cost them 2 CP instead of 1, right? This is a bit trickier. It means you have to position him in the right spot to be able to get the ability from it, and it still only is going to increase it by 1 CP. The advantage to this is it affects it on the first use, whereas it used to be like your opponent uses a stratagem, say they use Armor of Contempt, it costs them 1 CP, but then you could use his ability, so the next time they use it, it's going to cost them 2, right? Whereas this is just each time they are targeted with a stratagem, increase the cost by 1. Which means if you're worried that they're going to Armor of Contempt something, say in combat, you could throw Cypher up, then you could throw a unit in, and now, because Cypher's within 12 inches of them, if they want to use Armor of Contempt, it's going to cost them 2. So that's really good, and there's a bunch of, most factions have at least one really good battle tactic stratagem, and if you use Cypher well, you can actually make it so that that impacts them on the first use. And it also means that previously what would often happen is you would go, cool, I'm going to use Cypher's ability to make that stratagem cost 2, and then they'd lean on other stratagems. Whereas now it's like if they've got 2 really good battle tactics, like World Eaters have like 3, if you put him in the middle, it's like, doesn't matter which one they choose, he's going to make that cost additional. So I can see a world where this is a buff to Cypher, but I can also definitely see a world where it's considered a nerf. Depends on how you wield Cypher. Traditionally, I've always seen him as like a lone op, so he sits on your backfield, he's ready to do, secondaries or hit something that comes into your backfield, and he uses his ability from afar. I don't see him up front with the rest of your army. It sort of defeats the purpose of lone op if he's up in the thick of things. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Cypher. I wouldn't take him personally based on this, but I could definitely see an argument for it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the new Cypher. Fabius Bile, no changes here, I understand, but he's still absolutely fantastic, and he pops off in some of the detachments, so we'll talk about him soon. What else have we got? We've got the new Chaos Lord. I believe his data sheet stayed identical, he just got a new model. He might have had some weapon upgrade changes, but yeah, I believe he more or less stayed the same. How sick is that new model, by the way? I absolutely love that new Chaos Lord. Let's keep scrolling. So we've got the Terminator Lord, same deal. Chaos Lord with Jump Pack. Now this lad's pretty cool. He's the new data sheet, of course. He has the same Chaos Lord ability to get a stratagem for free, which is really cool. He can only be attached to raptors, which is less cool. But one thing he does have, which I think is a really cool ability, is Cruel Hunter. While this model is leading a unit, each time this unit piles in or consolidates, each model in that unit can move up to 6 inches instead of 3 inches. So that's really good in the way that you can take your raptors, you can hit something, and then you can do a big 6-inch consolidate move. You can get on objectives that your opponent's trying to screen you out from, you can tag multiple things, and we'll talk about the utility of raptors in a moment, but there's a detachment, the Dread Host, or I think it's called Dread Host, where having a big unit of raptors that can spread out and try and tag a lot of your opponent's army is very powerful. So we'll talk about that soon. We've got Huron Blackheart. I don't think anything on his detachment, his data sheet changed. He still lets you do the redeploy. However, this is done before you know who goes first. So you can't like roll and go, okay, I went first, I'm going to deploy aggressively, or I went second, I'm going to deploy defensively. You have to do this redeploy before you know who's going first. The main utility of this redeploy, in my opinion, is to deploy all your like raptors or warp talons on the front line. Tell your opponent, I have nothing in deep strike, so therefore they don't screen out your board. They just deploy in like a blob or whatever, and then at the start of the first turn, or before the first turn, before you know who's going first, after they've deployed their whole army, you just pick up those raptors, and now you've got something in deep strike that they didn't see coming. So that's a really neat trick you can do with Huron. All the other things that you can do is just deploy like real hard on one side of the board, so they deploy their army on the opposite side to try to stay away from you, and then you just redeploy over onto this side. Obviously, you want to make sure when you're going through your army at the start, you tell your opponent that you have the capacity to redeploy. But once you've told them that, you can then do whatever tricks you want to do in order to try to, subvert your opponent, because that's a lot of what Chaos Space Marines are, is about being tricky motherfuckers. Sorcerer, his unit gains -1 to hit, which is pretty cool. Sorcerer in Terminator armor gives him reroll advance and charge rolls, and you can essentially increase the AP of your incoming attacks by 1 into a target, and that's really cool as well. That pairs really well with one of the detachments, which we'll talk about in a moment. What else we got in here? The Lord Discordant. His ability, I think it's changed. It's basically... oh no, I think that's actually the same. But basically, he picks an enemy vehicle within 12 inches. That unit takes a leadership test. If it passes, subtract 1 from the hit roll. If it fails, it's not eligible to shoot. The problem with that ability, and the reason that ability sucks, is because it's in the shooting phase of your opponent's shooting phase if they're within 12 inches. So they just in their movement phase, they just move to be 12.1 inches away and then shoot. And your Disco Lord can't really do much about it. What it does do is it allows you to bully objectives. Like if you put him on an objective, it's like, cool, now if your opponent wants to get within 12 inches of that objective, in order to hold it or control it, they're going to be at negative to hit. But it also only affects vehicle units, so potentially good in like a Chaos Knights matchup, but I don't think it's that good. And then at the start of your shooting phase, pick an enemy vehicle within 12, and at the end of each phase, each time a friendly Heretic Custodes model makes an attack against the target unit, you can reroll wound roll of 1, which that's okay, being able to reroll 1s, but again, I don't see that as being particularly exciting. Unfortunately, because I do love the Discord model. Master of Possessions, one of the big changes here is that he used to give a 6-up Feel No Pain to the unit that he was attached to. He does not do that anymore, which is unfortunate. What else we got? Master of Executions, I don't believe his things have changed. He basically gets reroll hits if they're below starting strength and reroll wounds if they're below half, and generates CP. Chosen and Legionaries, yep, I don't believe he's changed at all. The Demon Prince, I don't think he's changed at all. He gets a 6-inch aura of cover, and each time he shoots or fights, he can reroll a hit roll, 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll. I think that's different. But yeah, he's cool. Demon Prince with wings. He now inflicts a battle shock test over a unit that he moved over, and he does mortal wounds when he's charging things. Warpsmith. Now these guys, I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of. They can heal vehicles. They get blown up, and at the end of your movement phase, select an enemy vehicle and it takes a battle shock test. All 3 of those are pretty cool abilities, depending on which detachment you choose. The Dark Apostle, he has an ability here which I'm not sure whether we had this before, but it's basically at the start of the fight phase you can pop your Dark Disciple model, and your opponent suffers D3 mortal wounds. That's pretty cool. That being said, I really like the Dark Disciples because if you have them in a unit, because they themselves are not characters, if your opponent targets your unit, say you've got them in a unit of Chosen and they target you with a 3 damage shot, you can just take it on a Dark Disciple and just kill one of those plebs instead of killing the highly valuable Chosen models. And those Dark Disciples have a 4-up invulnerable save, so that's a few wounds that you can tank on a 4-up invulnerable save before you start chipping into your Chosen. So the Dark Apostle I really like in that regard, and the +1 to wound is also really, really tasty. And being able to stop something from being battle shocked, that's really cool as well. So yeah, he's really good. Trader Enforcer, nothing's really changed here. One thing that I have noticed, and this was brought to my attention at a recent tournament, is he's got an ability here called Mutated Bodyguard, which is while this unit contains a Trader Ogryn model, character models in this unit have the Feel No Pain 4+ ability. Which I always thought that was weird, because if he's attached to a unit, you can't allocate attacks to the character model. So him having a 4-up Feel No Pain is kind of irrelevant, unless they precision him. But who's spending CP or putting in the effort to precision out a Trader Enforcer when the Trader Enforcer has a 5-up invulnerable save, the unit is attached to doesn't, and it's not like the Trader Enforcer is some kind of beat stick that you need to kill fast, like he's a guardsman, right? So I was like, that's just the dumbest rule. But I played a game against the bloke who had Celestine, and Celestine is a similar thing where if you run her on her own, she's a multi-model unit that has a character in it, but isn't an attached unit. In the same way that if you run the Trader Enforcer and the Ogryn on their own, they're a multiple model unit, but only one of the models, the Trader Enforcer, is the character. And basically there was the recent design commentary where if you have a unit like that, because it's not an attached unit, you actually can allocate attacks to the character model before the other model in that unit, because it's not a bodyguard unit. And basically what that means is if you run these two guys on their own, they're a 65-point unit that you could sit on an objective somewhere, and if your opponent tries to shoot them, they're going to have a 5-up invulnerable save and a 4-up Feel No Pain until the Trader Enforcer dies. You also use the toughness 6 of the Ogryn bodyguard, so they're toughness 6, 5-up invulnerable save, 4-up Feel No Pain with 3 wounds. So, you know, small arms isn't going to kill that super easily. But still kind of a stupid unit in my opinion. We've got the Dark Commune, so they still give a 5-up invulnerable save. They still give a 5-up invulnerable save to the unit that they're leading. And then once per battle in your command phase, they can use their ability, and if it does, it can declare a charge in a turn which it advanced, and they get +1 to the hit roll and +1 to the wound roll. So that's obviously very strong. Now we go down into the Legionaries. Nothing's changed here. They still have their reroll wound rolls of 1, and then reroll full wounds if they're targeting something on an objective marker, which these guys are going to come into play in one of the detachments soon. You got this new guy, Cultist Firebrand. He's new. He's a leader. He's a character. He has grenades. He's got a big flamer that's D6 +3 shots at strength 5 AP 1. He gets you to reroll leadership tests, and in the shooting phase, after his shots, like one enemy infantry unit that one or more of those shots were done by, and they take a battle shock test. So I don't think anyone's going to take him, because you're just increasing the potential for your opponent to score Assassinate when you've got a guy. But it depends how cheap he is. If he's dirt cheap, like if he's like 15 points or something like that, then you might consider it. You might be like, cool, I'll take one of those, I'll put him in strategic reserves, and he can come on in my opponent's backfield somewhere and do teleport homers, or get behind enemy lines, or whatever. You got the Cultist mob, so they still sticky objectives, which is fantastic because that's all they were ever worth. They do have that new damned keyword, which does mean that they're not going to get a few of the different buffs that are out there. They can be taken in units of 20, so there's some interesting stuff you can do in the cultist-specific detachment. What else we got here? Trader Guardsmen, again, no change there, and as far as I'm concerned, they're completely outshone by cultists. Cultists are just better. Their ability being able to get cover and them having a 5-up save means, sure, if you put them on an objective out in the open, they're going to have a 4-up save, but they're still just toughness 3 guardsmen, they just die. What else we got? Felgor Beastmen. Now this one's interesting. So these guys used to have Scout Move was their ability. That's been replaced with, if this unit starts the game in strategic reserves, it can be set up in the reinforcement step of your first, second, or third movement phase regardless of mission rules. And if it's set up in strategic reserves for the purpose of setting up the battlefield, treat the current battle round as one higher than it actually is. So what that means is if you put these guys in in strategic reserves, they can come on in the first turn, which is kind of cool. And it also means that you need, like, the normal rule that prevents you from coming on in your opponent's deployment zone turn 2 won't apply because turn 2 is treated as if it's turn 3, which means you can come on, right? So it basically just pushes everything one step forward. In turn 1, you can come on anywhere except for your opponent's deployment zone, and in turn 2 onwards, you can come on into your opponent's deployment zone. That's actually pretty interesting. Particularly, some of the missions have objectives that are placed close enough to the edges of the table that you can walk onto it. So that's really interesting. I still don't know whether they're worth taking, but it's an interesting change. The Chaos Terminators, they got the same thing. Theirs is slightly different, so now it's each time they make a Dark Pact until the end of the phase. A model in this unit can reroll the hit roll. I just want to double check that with the current rule, because I'm pretty sure the current rule was just that every time they make an attack, they can reroll the hit roll. And if that's true, Chaos Terminator Squad, abilities. Oh no, it's the same. My apologies, it's the same. So that means you don't get your rerolls in Overwatch and things like that, or when you fight on death or anything like that. You might get it in Overwatch, yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. No biggie. Chosen, they've still got the same charge when they advance and fall back. They've still got the icon for rerolling their tests. They're exactly the same. I think they're quite interesting. I think people are going to probably lean back on them, even though they did go up in points recently. I think some of the detachments make up for that, and they make them much more interesting. Chaos Bikers, they got a new ability, so they used to be able to, if they were within 6 inches of a table edge at the end of the opponent's turn, they could be picked up, and then they could deep strike again. Now, it's every time they make a melee attack, if they made a charge move this turn, improve the strength characteristic of the attacks by 1. So now they go in with their chainswords at strength 5. I actually think that's a bit of a nerf to bikes, to be honest. I think they're not a strong combat unit, so giving them +1 strength on the charge is not really that interesting. But yeah, it's a unfortunate nerf to bikers, which is weird because no one was really taking them. Maybe they thought no one was taking them because they didn't punch hard enough in combat, so they thought, we'll up the punch in combat. But it's like, no, the only thing that was worth considering was the ability to take them off the board, and you've taken that away, so now they're definitely not going to be taken. Raptors, so while an enemy unit's within 6 inches of the model, each time it takes battle shock test, subtract 1 from the result, and at the start of any fight phase, each enemy unit with an engagement range of 1 or more units with this ability must take a battle shock test. So this is really good. Raptors, I think they're going to be seen a lot more common, because both of those abilities are really good in one of the particular detachments, and it's one of the ones that I think is potentially going to be the most popular. So Raptors are really good. You still want to give them a couple of special weapons and then just bulk out on chainswords. But yeah, there's some cool stuff there. I do love that they've got this picture of the old Raptor here in the Codex. So you got the new Raptor models, which look exactly nothing like the artwork that they have pictured here. I miss those old Raptors, they were cool. Now let's talk about the big news. Now I did a video on this recently, so I won't go into too much detail here. The video came out last night, like 9 o'clock or something like that. So if you want to know about how to use these guys in detail, check that out. But Warp Talons got a new datasheet ability that's probably the most broken rule that I've seen in 10th edition. This is absolutely buck wild. So it's called Warp Strike. At the end of the fight phase, if this unit was eligible to fight in this phase and is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you can remove this unit from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. So what that means is you get your 10 Warp Talons, they put out some small unit of Marines or something onto an objective to do cleanse or whatever. You can jump out, kill that unit of Marines, and then disappear back into Deep Strike. And now your opponent can't respond. And then in their turn, you're going to rapid ingress, charge something, disappear back into Deep Strike. And as long as you're killing the thing that you charge, you're going to be able to continue doing that. And your opponent actually is never going to be able to target your Warp Talons. It's untargetable. And a unit of 10 Warp Talons, with, that's 4 attacks each, so 40 attacks, that have, weapon skill 3, strength 5 with twin links, so rerolling wounds, AP 2. There's a detachment that's going to let you get that to AP 3. It's going to let you reroll hits on them as well. These units will rip most things apart. Nothing big, but if there's something big, you soften it up first so that it's down in wounds, and then you charge in your warp talons, you finish it off, and then you fuck off. Really, really cool. I think GW are going to have to put the points up on these guys significantly, because otherwise you're going to see every list is going to start with 3 units of warp talons, just so that you can do that trick all over the place. Because you could throw 3 units of warp talons on the one thing, kill it, and then fuck off with all 3 of them, and your opponent can't stop you. And what are they going to do? They can't shoot you, they can't deal with it. It's so hard to deal with. I think it's going to really upset some people. Now we've got Chaos Spawn, so there's a change on these guys. First, they're OC0. I think that's the only data sheet change to the the stats on the data sheet that I've seen. They still have their 5-up Feel No Pain, but their new Mind-Breaking Mutations aura is while an enemy unit is within 3 inches of this unit, subtract 1 from the objective control characteristic of models in that enemy unit. So this is actually really cool, because you can throw them out onto an objective. If your opponent's got a bunch of OC1 models on the objective, and you throw this guy in, that you don't have to charge them. You don't charge them, you just put him on the objective near them. And now they all turned into OC0. So if you have, say you've got a Rhino, you've run this guy up behind the Rhino where he's hidden, so your opponent can't shoot him. And if they've got a bunch of OC1 models on that objective, you can just put the Rhino on, advance this guy on, and take the objective from them. And now in order for them to take it back, they have to kill these Spawn. Kind of annoying. There's some cool stuff you can do with Chaos Spawn. Havocs, no charge here. They still have their ignore modifiers to ballistic skill and hit rolls, which is kind of cool. The Hellbrute. There is a change on here. So he's got the one that allows him to get both Dark Packs, lethals and sustained. But he's also got here devoted to destruction. If this model is equipped with 2 melee weapons in addition to its close combat weapon, add 2 attacks to the 2 to the attacks characteristic of those 2 weapons. So it used to be if it took 2 of the same weapon, it would get twin linked. But now you can take the fist and the hammer, and now both of them are going in with 7 attacks, which is pretty cool. What else we got? We got the Helldrake. Yeah, not even worth looking at. It's absolutely hot rubbish. Gets +1 to hit against fly. So if the meta somehow was full of things that could fly, like warp talons, for example, then this is kind of okay. He's still way too expensive though. What else have we got? We've got the Venom Crawler. This guy's interesting. He's had some slight changes, but there's also one detachment that makes him really, really interesting. He used to basically, every time you would kill an enemy unit, he would gain +2 attacks to all of his weapons. Now it's only at the end of the fight phase, if one or more attacks made by this model destroyed one or more enemy units. Until the end of the battle, you would add 1 to an attacks characteristic of his weapons. So it still adds the attacks to his shooting weapons, but you have to kill something in melee, whereas it used to be just kill something. So that's a bit of a nerf to him, but there's been some buffs to him as well. So we'll talk about those soon. But he still gets 12 shots with his Excruciator cannons, and 6 shots in melee, with some AP1 2 damage weapons. It's not trash. The Mauler Fiend, he got a little bit of a glow up in one of the detachments, but his data sheet remains unchanged. Ignoring move move modifiers and advanced and charge rolls is pretty cool. The Forge Fiend, there's a slight change here. There's been a lot of slight changes that I don't really understand why. So for example, for this one, each time he's selected to shoot, he can use this ability. If he does, he gains Devastating Wounds and Hazardous. Whereas it used to be every time he made a Dark Pact, he would then get this ability. So now basically you don't have to Dark Pact with your Forge Fiend in order to get the Devastating and Hazardous. But you're probably going to be Dark Pacting anyway, so whatever. Rhino, no changes. Land Raider, no changes. The Predators, no changes, but there is a detachment that makes Predators quite interesting. So we'll talk about that in a moment. That's the same for both Predators. Vindicator, again, no changes, but there's a really cool detachment for Vindicators. The Defiler, so there's some changes here. So now he has Demon Forge. Once per fight phase, one unit from your army with this ability can be targeted by the counter-offensive stratagem for 0 CP, even if you've already targeted a different unit with that same stratagem. And he ignores terrain features that are 4 inches or less in height. So the Defiler is actually interesting. So first of all, there's a detachment that makes him really, really good. But that ability to combat interrupt for free, so if your opponent charges 2 things, they kind of have to fight the Defiler first, because if they fight the other thing first, the Defiler's just going to interrupt for free. That's really cool. And it allows you to do some interesting stuff with the way that you defensively position yourself, because you can put a big scary unit out onto an objective and a Defiler on the other objective, and if they want to charge you off of both, like, it's really hard for them. They have to fight the Defiler first, otherwise he's going to fight, and when he fights, he actually goes pretty hard. Like, if he goes with his Defiler claws, he's going to have 5 attacks hitting on 3s, but they're, strength 16, AP 3, D6 plus 1 damage. Like, they will absolutely mince things with those claws. And then if you've given him the Scourge as well, there's another 3 attacks that are doing multiple damage. So he's cool. I like the Defiler. Hideous model, but then we've got the Cornlord of Skulls, arguably one of the worst abilities in the faction, where it's at the end of the fight phase after he's made his attacks. If he destroyed 1 or more enemy units this phase, each enemy unit within 6 inches of the model must take a battle shock test. Now the problem here is that if you're charging something with your Lord of Skulls and you're killing it with your Lord of Skulls, and that's causing a splash of battle shock tests, it's like, first of all, you don't know which ones are going to pass and fail, so you can't plan around this. And even if they all fail, like, it almost immediately ticks over into your opponent's turn, because this happens in your fight phase. So you've charged them, you've fought, you do all these battle shock tests, then you're like, okay, cool, that's my combat done, over to you, and then it goes straight into their command phase, and they all recover from battle shock instantly. So they're actually battle shocked for the shortest possible amount of time. There are some utility for this, like if you want to charge the Lord of Skulls in and then charge something else in, right? And you want to fight with the Lord of Skulls, cause that battle shock test. Now they can't use the interrupt stratagem here, or they can't use Armor of Contempt or whatever, because they can't target a battle shocked unit with stratagems. That's kind of cool. But again, now you're banking on it. If they've got 2 CP in their pocket and you're worried that they're going to use it to interrupt, are you really going to charge the Lord of Skulls and your unit in, hope that you kill something, and then hope that they fail their battle shock test just so that they can't interrupt? Like, that's a gain-losing strategy. If you're doing that, you're making mistakes, because if they pass the battle shock test, which they're likely to do, they're going to interrupt and they're going to kill you, and you're going to lose the game. So you're actually, you're risking a lot, and it's a very unlikely gamble. So Lord of Skulls is bad. There is a detachment that's kind of interesting for him, which we'll talk about, but his ability itself is almost unusably bad. I've got the Knockalith Crown. Most tournaments that these days don't allow fortifications. The WTC don't allow fortifications, and a lot of people follow that model. But for those who don't, he basically gives you +1 leadership, benefits of cover, if you're not fully visible, and yeah, it's kind of useless. It's very useless. The Accursed Cultists. Now these guys got a different ability now. So they've got Scout 6 inches built into their profile, which is kind of cool. You can take a unit of 16. So being able to scout move them is kind of interesting. And then they've also got essentially Blood Surge, the same as the Khorne Berserkers, where it's, every turn they're shot, if one or more models is destroyed, they can make a horde move. To do so, roll a d6, they move that many inches. So they're no longer regenerating models, which hurts, but they're going to be pushing up the board way faster than they were previously. So I think they're interesting. Possessed, the change here is that their Dark Pact is once per battle. So when they use a Dark Pact, until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by the models have Devastating Wounds ability. So they used to be able to do that often, whereas now it's once per battle. I don't think that's that big of a nerf though, because generally what's going to happen is you're going to send them in, you're going to use your ability, you're going to blow something up, and then your opponent was going to turn all of their guns on those possessed and kill them down to having, either dead or having only a handful left. And as a result, like, you're probably not likely to use that multiple times anyway, so not that big of a deal. Obliterators, the big change here is that they're now limited to 2 models, so you can't take a unit of 4 anymore, which is something that I'm surprised you ever could, to be honest, because it used to be units of 3, they come in a box of 2, so, I don't understand why you were ever able to take 4. But it still allows you to use your Dark Pact and go indirect. So they're still good. I often advocated for units of 2 anyway. One of the advantages of the unit of 4 was that any stratagems that you put on them affect all 4 of them. But the advantage of units of 2 is A, you can split them up and put them in 2 different places, which is really, really valuable. And B, you could sequence their shooting. So if you have one unit of 4, you have to allocate where all 4 of those are shooting first, right? Whereas if you have 2 units of 2, you can shoot these 2, allocate where their shooting's going, and then depending on the results of that damage, you can then allocate the other 2. So say you're versing like a Chaos Knights army. If you drop 4 down, you might go, I'm going to put 2 into that knight and 2 into that knight, and then resolve your shooting. But if both of those under-roll, now you've got 2 knights left alive, and you're going to be like really mad. Whereas if you had 2 units of 2, you can go, cool, these 2 are going to shoot just that knight, and then if they kill it, then you're happy. If they fail to kill it, you might go, okay, cool, of these 2, one of them's going to finish off that knight, and then the other one's going to go into the other knight. And now, sure, you're not going to kill the second one, but you're definitely killing the first one. Whereas the previous version, you had to be really, really good at your target allocation if you have a unit of 4. And this also means that you don't have to commit all 4 at once. You might be in a position where you're like, cool, I actually just want to drop 2 this turn and hold the other 2 for next turn. Whereas if you got a unit of 4, you can't do that. So there's lots of pros and cons to running the unit of 2 over the unit of 4. And now that decision is just made for you by the datasheet. And then I think that's it. Yep, that's it. So that is the end of all of the data sheets. Now, obviously, it's entirely possible that I missed something there, that there's been some changes. I've only had this in my hands for, a handful of hours. So forgive me if I overlooked anything. If you know of anything that I've overlooked, chuck it in the comments, and I'll update this so that we've got a full video that doesn't have anything in particular missed. But now what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look at the comments that you guys have chucked in, and then we'll get on to the detachments, which is the particularly spicy part. Let me just load the... how do I load that? Comments. Public chat. Okay, here we go. Alright, so we've got a $15 donated chat. Hey, probably not able to watch the whole live stream. We'll catch up later. Keep up the good work. P.S. I hope a blitz can go down. Thank you very much, Lexi. I agree, obliterators are too expensive now, particularly with the only being able to be used in units of 2. It means that the powerful stratagems that we used to use on them are of less effect. Like being able to overwatch used to be crazy when you had 4 obliterators. Now you've only got 2. It's like, are you really going to bother overwatching? Being able to get reroll wounds. They used to be able to get reroll hits and wounds at their points. Now, on a unit of 4. Now you're limited to a unit of 2, and that stratagem doesn't provide the reroll hits anymore. So they're way less scary than they used to be. I would agree. I'd like to see that reflected in their points cost. So yeah, that's absolutely a good call. Now let's just have a quick scroll through the other general comments before we move on to the next section. If we need to leave the stream for dinner, where can I watch it again? Thank you. So the stream should stay on my channel. So you should be able to just look on the channel, I think there's a tab for live content. And then the stream will be there. I think YouTube runs it live, and then after the stream's finished, it takes a little bit to process before they put it up as a video. So you might have to wait for that for an hour or so. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'll definitely make sure that content is still available. Not enough cowbells. Good day, Professor Blog. I like that. Enforcer changed the strat he can make for free. Oh yeah, so the Enforcer now, he makes Overwatch for free, I believe. I'm not sure what his previous one was. Cultists have pistols now. Bikers are trash. Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about the Warp Talons getting an errata. I don't know how you would errata that datasheet ability to like be more balanced. Like, it's because that datasheet ability, the ability to fight and then disappear, is wild. What are they going to do? Completely change the ability? Like, that seems unlikely. I think what's probably going to happen is they're probably going to make it so that you can only do it in your own turn. Because one of the other things that you can do is they charge something, you heroically intervene with your Warp Talons, kill the thing, and then you disappear in their turn, and then you can come straight back in your turn, but somewhere else on the board. Like, there's some real wild stuff you can do with Warp Talons, so maybe they'll make it so it only happens in your own turn, or maybe they'll just replace it with a standard Grey Knight style uppy downy, where at the end of it, your opponent's turn, you can pick up the unit. Maybe. The crown, the Knocklith crown, used to give a 4-up invulnerable save. Now it's +1 leadership. I thought that was odd when I was reading it. I was like, I remember reading the crown when it very first came out, but I don't play it because most tournaments around here don't allow fortifications. But I remember seeing it and thinking, I can see why people would want to take this. But now it's like, I'm +1 leadership aura? Like, what? Unless it's fucking 20 points, who cares? A Blitz range also got dropped from 24 to 18 on the Melter profile. Ooh, that's spicy. I didn't see that. Let me have a look at that. Oh. Yeah, ooh. That's yuck. And comments saying that it's sad that they didn't buff specific units. So, yeah, that's the datasheet changes. All in all, I think most of those changes are bearable. There's no real changes in there that are that crazy outside of the Warp Talons. The Warp Talons is absolutely wild. Everything else is well within, you know, what you'd expect. No units that were OP before are now trash. And no units that were trash before are now OP. I think it's more or less all the same. And in my opinion, the data sheets weren't the problem for Chaos Space Marines, you know. And neither was the detachment. We got a lot of new detachments in here. The previous detachment had some of the best stratagems in the game, like on index release. They had reroll hits and wounds. That's wild. They had advance and charge. That's wild. They had fights on death on a 3+ for corn units. That's wild. They had the Nurgle stratagem being untargetable. Like, they had some of the best stratagems in the game, in my opinion. And the detachment, being able to Dark Pact and then get critical 5s, that's wild. Like, people were doing massive amounts of damage with that. So, the detachments wasn't the problem, and the data sheets weren't the problem. The problem Chaos Space Marines have always had was points. You know, if they're not point costed effectively and competitively, everything's just too expensive, and it doesn't really work. So, it'll be interesting to see whether or not these detachments are going to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a quick ad break, and I'm going to run to the bathroom, and then we're going to get stuck straight into the detachments themselves. So I'll be right back.
Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits.
Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high-quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.
Blog for the Blood God. Blog for the Blood God.
Alrighty guys, we are back. Now, I just caught up with some of the comments from the exclusive Patreon-only Discord channel that we run. If that's something that you'd be interested in, make sure you head over to Patreon and join in that. We've got a ripper little community there. We got one comment here from Nucky Thompson saying, "Come on, you mad cunt Dean Sinbeck. I know it's 6 a.m. for you, but it's 4 p.m. for me." And with the old saying that it's 5 o'clock somewhere, that comment was about an hour ago, which means it's probably 5 o'clock, which means it's time to have a drink. So I got myself a wild turkey, and I'm going to get stuck in. So I know it's 7 a.m. here, but it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So cheers, brother. Let's celebrate this new Codex in style. Another quick shout out that I will do. I know I just hit you guys with a bunch of fucking ads, but hopefully you enjoy those ads. The idea of them is to be kind of content in themselves because they're kind of funny. But one thing I do want to talk about is the Blog for the Blood God raffle. I've got, in order to help me fund some cancer treatment for my cat and also my trip to Europe for the World Team Championships, I'm trying to do some fundraising stuff. And one of those is I'm doing a raffle where I'm giving away a set of neoprene objective markers with the Blog for the Blood God logo and stuff on them, with this guy. And then also a set of the dice, the ones that you would have just seen in the ad. Really, really cool looking dice. So giving away 5 sets of those. And you can find the information on how to join that raffle in the links of this video, in the comments, or the whatever it's called, the description. And that raffle is it will ask you when you fill it out to select what state you're from. That's just because it's an Australian website and they want to know all this sort of stuff. So if you're from international or whatever, feel free to just select whichever one. As long as your email address is filled in correctly, when I draw the winners, I'll be contacting each winner to get confirmation of their preferred postal address, and I will be posting international. So that should be fine. I don't think there will be any problems there. So yeah, if you want to join that raffle, show your support for the channel and allow me to fund the various projects that I'm working on, that would be very much appreciated. And you might win some sweet swag. So yeah, check that out. But yeah, with that being said, what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into talking about the detachments. And there's some truly fantastic detachments in here. So let's jump straight over to that. Alright, so here we've got the army rules. So the Dark Pact, it hasn't changed. The only difference is now you roll your Dark Pact before shooting, but you still get to shoot. I don't believe it kills you. Let's just double check that. So if you're a Heretic Astartes, each time a unit with this ability is selected to shoot, it can make a Dark Pact. If it does, make a leadership test before the effects of the Dark Pact are resolved. If that test is first take a leadership test before any effects of the Dark Pact are resolved. If the test is failed, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then select one of the following abilities to gain. So you actually can die from your Dark Pact before shooting, which is new. It used to be you'd shoot, then you'd roll your Dark Pact, and if you failed, you die. So it's a slight nerf to Dark Pacts. And I actually think, for what it's worth, I actually think this is one of the shittest army rules. It's really, really good when it was combined with the sustained and lethal 5+, like the critical 5+, then it was really, really good. But on its own, if their whole army rule is you can choose either sustained or lethal, but you take damage. It's like, well, hang on, World Eaters just roll their 8 dice and they can just take sustained and lethal on that army-wide with no negative consequences. Or they can take advance and charge, or they can take fights on death. Like, so many options. This is just pick one of them, but you potentially die in the process. Custodians used to be able to just pick one of these without having to worry about rolling for it. You know, there's tons of detachments that are... I think this army rule is quite weak, to be honest. And I think it was pumped up by the previous rule that allowed them to, combo it with a critical 5+. And it was like, well, when you combo with a critical 5+ and you're getting access to full reroll hits, now it absolutely is popping off. But on its own, it's not really that exciting. It's also got here about adding in things like Berserkers, Rubric Marines, Plague Marines, and Noise Marines. All of those are actually really good in some of these detachments. So we don't know what the Noise Marines profile is yet. We assume it's more or less the same. But they're going to be really, really interesting in these detachments. So let's have a look at the first detachment. Now, before I get into the detachments, just remember, if you've got any comments or any thoughts that you would like to have discussed, chuck them in the comments. I'll be going through the comments after each detachment. So I'll go through this detachment, look at the comments, go through the next one, look at the comments. If there's something that you want to make sure I don't miss it, because I will miss them because I'm bad. If you want to make sure I don't miss any comments, make sure you attach even a $1 donation is fine to highlight that comment, and that way I'll make sure that your comment gets read and responded to, even if it's something ridiculous. If you want to throw me off and make me read something stupid on camera, then by all means, I think that could be a lot of fun as well. So I promise you I will read anything that has a donation attached to it. Do with that what you will. Unless it's going to get me like demonetized and ripped off of YouTube, then maybe not. But yeah. Cool. So their detachment rule for the Veterans of the Long War is essentially Oath of Moment. So you basically, at the start of your command phase, you select one unit from your opponent's army to be the focus of hatred. Till the next command phase, each time a Heretic Astartes model from your army, excluding damned models, makes an attack that targets the focus of your hatred, you can reroll the hit roll. So that's pretty cool. That's going to combo well with a lot of things. Like, so for example, Warp Talons, they get reroll wounds, but they don't have reroll hits built in. So if you go, cool, I'm going to put focus of hatred on that unit, send my Warp Talons out, they're going to kill it, and then they're going to fuck off. That's really, really cool. And then there's a bunch of stuff that also gets a lot of utility from reroll hits. Let's look at their enhancements. Enhancements are often where things go crazy for me. Let's have a look. Chaos Lord model only. Each time the bearer makes an attack that targets your focus of hatred on an unmodified successful wound roll of a 5+, you score a critical wound. So that's okay on a Thunderhammer guy because the critical wounds are going to be doing dev wounds. So now he's doing critical wounds on a 5+, which is kind of cool. If it's cheap, you might not, dodge this one. You might just be like, yep, cool, it's cheap, I'll take it. But I don't think it's worth moving the world for. Eager for Vengeance, Heretic Astartes model only, excluding Damned. The bearer's unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. While doing so, each time a model in that unit makes an attack that targets the focus of your hatred, add 1 to the hit roll. And each time you select your focus of hatred as a target of that unit's charge, you can add 1 to the charge roll. So this is really good. Being able to get +1 to hit, I see this on a Chaos Lord attached to a unit of Legionaries, because now they're getting +1 to hit, and then they're also getting reroll wounds, and then they've got the Chaos Lord in there. He's also going to gain the +1 to hit and the reroll wounds, so that's really cool. I think that first one also, if you've got the 5+ scores a critical wound, if you put him on a squad of Legionaries, and now he goes in with 5s to hit, do 3 dev wounds, and he's got full reroll wounds, like he's going to fish and he's going to generate a ton of wounds. So both of those are really cool, make really cool beat sticks. Then we've got Eye of Abaddon, Heretic Astartes model only. While the bearer is on the battlefield, each time your focus of hatred is destroyed, roll a d6, and on a 4+ you gain a CP. That's not bad. Generating CP is always nice. However, one of the things I'm concerned about with these like random chance to generate CP things is often if your game plan is built around having lots of CP, you're probably taking tactical objectives so that you can discard objectives to generate your CP. You're not likely to combo that with a random roll. So this is something where it's like, if you have a character that can take enhancements that doesn't have an enhancement, and this is cheap, then you might do it. But I don't think you're going to take a character specifically so that you can take this. I think you're much more likely to go with the ones that increase the damage output. And the last is Mark of Legend, Heretic Astartes model only, excluding Damned. Once per turn, you can re-roll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, and 1 saving roll made for the bearer. That's just bad. That's not particularly interesting. So I don't think you'll ever take that. But now let's have a look at their stratagems. So we've got a 2 CP Epic Deed. This would want to be good for 2 CP. Any phase just after your focus of hatred is destroyed, 1 Heretic Astartes character from your unit is the target. Select 1 enemy unit within 12 inches of it and visible to your unit until the start of your next command phase. That enemy unit is considered your focus of hatred. So if it wasn't locked to characters, I would think this is fantastic. Being able to kill your target and then go, cool, 2 CP, that's now a new target. And now I get reroll hits against that as well. Is really good because then you could like shoot one target down and then move to another target. The fact that it's linked to characters is going to limit your capacity to do this. And it's 2 CP and it's not a battle tactic, so you can't reduce the costs of that with a Chaos Lord or anything like that. Yeah, it's okay. It's just okay. Contemptuous Disregard. So 1 CP, battle tactic. You use it in your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 Heretic Astartes excluding Damned that was selected as a target until the end of the phase. Each time an attack target to your unit worsen the AP by 1. So Armor of Contempt. For 1 CP though, so we're back in line with our loyalist brothers. And it is a battle tactic, so it can be used for free. That's really good. 1 CP for reducing the AP is fantastic. Bringers of Despair, start of the fight phase, 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army that's within engagement range of your focus of hatred. Until the end of the phase, your unit has the fight's first ability. So it's 2 CP and it's only against your target of hatred. But that's pretty cool. If you know that your opponent is going to, do something, charge you with something, and you go, cool, I'm actually just going to make them my target of hatred, and now when they charge me, I'm going to fight first and get reroll hits against them, and I'm going to eviscerate them. That's actually really good. It's also worth noting that I believe, I'll double check it, but I believe this will have the same wording as... Yeah, so the same as Oath of Moment, you can select things that aren't on the board. It's just select 1 unit from your opponent's army to be the target. So if your opponent's got like a Rhino or something like that, and it's got a unit of Chosen or something inside of it that's going to come out next turn and it's going to fuck you up, what you can do is you can go, cool, I'm actually going to select them as my target of hatred, and then I'm going to put my unit on an objective, and now what are you going to do? If you come out and charge me, I'm going to fight first, and I'm going to get reroll hits against you, and if I'm Legionaries, I'm also rerolling wounds, and then I'm just going to rip you apart. So now that Chosen unit that they'd staged up ready to push you off of an objective actually can't do anything. And that's just one example. There's tons of ways you can use that. So that's really good. It's a shame that it's 2 CP and it's linked to, the focus of hatred, but still very cool. Next, we've got 1 CP for the Black Crusade. Use it in your movement phase. Select a Heretic Astartes infantry or mounted unit from your army, excluding Damned. Until the end of your turn, your unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it advanced, and bolt pistols, bolt guns, combi bolters equipped by models in your unit have devastating wounds ability, while your unit has not already inflicted 6 wounds this turn using that ability. That's pretty cool. Being able to advance and shoot is also really good because it allows you to advance out onto an objective, and if you don't have any assault weapon, you can still advance out and then spend 1 CP, and now you can do actions because you're eligible to shoot. And getting dev wounds on a shit ton of bolters that are, if they're on a Legionary squad, potentially re-rolling wounds. Being able to go, cool, here's 6 mortal wounds. That's actually really good. That really pumps the damage output of your units up. 1 CP to let the galaxy burn. In your shooting phase, select one Heretic Astartes unit from your army, excluding Tzeentch units that have not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, range weapons equipped by models in that unit have ignores cover, and change the attack's characteristic of torrent weapons by models in that unit to 6. That's brutal. So first of all, ignoring cover for 1 CP is pretty good, because it's kind of like 1 CP to increase the AP of your guns by 1, depending on the target, of course, but being able to do that, that's really good. And then also being able to change the flamer attacks to automatic 6. I see this being really good on a Plague Marine unit, because they can have multiple flamers in it. And their flamers, when they ignore cover, and then they hit you with max shots, with their anti-infantry 2+, and 4+, etc. That's really good. So I like that for 1 CP. And then we've got Millennia of Experience. 1 CP in your opponent's movement phase just after they end a normal move, advance, or fallback move. Select one Heretic Astartes unit or mounted unit, so infantry or mounted unit in your army that is within 9 inches of that enemy unit and not within engagement range. Your unit can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. So being able to reactively move. So and that's only 1 CP as well. So there's tons of really cool stuff in here. I really like the fights first. I really like the reactive move. I really like the ignores cover. I really like the dev wounds. I really like... literally all of these strats are fantastic. They're all really good. And then being able to pick an enemy unit to get reroll hits against is going to pair really well with your legionaries, because now you've got an army that's going to be getting reroll hits and wounds across the board against that particular target. So I think this detachment is an absolutely fantastic starting point. I might just quickly... So the thing about this detachment that makes it interesting is that it's got very broad appeal. It affects a lot of things really well. Like, if you're a shooting-based army, being able to pick an enemy target and just go, cool, I get reroll hits against that, and now I'm going to be doing damage with that. Or if you're a shooting army, you get the bolter strat or the flamer strat and you want to blast things, that's really good. But also, it's got a lot of good combat stuff, because you can use the fights first ability, you can use the reactive moves to manipulate combats. Like, if they're going to move up and try to charge you, you can move back, and now they fail their charge, and then we tick over to your turn, and you can slam in and fuck them up. So it's a very Black Legion detachment, and I think this is absolutely ripper. I think this is a really good place to start, and it will be a very common common detachment used. It's not the most broken one, but it's definitely one of the better ones. But let's have a quick look at the comments, actually. That's what I was going to do. Fashdor went up from T10 to T9, from T9 to T10, sorry. Wondering if I should be pissed about my Iron Warriors detachment. Absolutely not. The Iron Warriors detachment's one of the best. Plague Marines and Foul Blightspawn with their flamers let the galaxy burn strat could be pretty spicy. Absolutely. Would Cult Marines benefit from the detachment abilities as well? I know they don't get dark packs. Yes, they do definitely benefit from the detachment abilities, because it's just Heretic Astartes model from your army, and it does specify in the cults thing at the top that here, if your faction is Heretic Astartes, you can include any of the following units, and when you do, replace their faction keyword with Heretic Astartes. So all your cult troops, they do gain your Heretic Astartes keywords, and that means that they can use all the stratagems, they can use the abilities, the detachment abilities, all of that sort of stuff. So yep, absolutely. We've got Nucky Thompson. Pretty sure you can only ally cult troop choices, not the characters too, but that would be sick. That's absolutely true. You can't include the characters, and you can't include, it's just Rubric Marines, Berserkers, Plague Marines, and Noise Marines. Alright, cool. So, that's the first detachment done and dusted. Let's have a look at this next one. The Deceptors. This detachment looks like so much fun. I reckon this one's going to be a ton of fun to play. So first things first, in the declare battle formation select step, you can select a number of legionaries or cultist mob units from your army. Until the end of the battle, those units and any characters attached to them have the Infiltrator's ability. The maximum number of units is depending on the battle size. We play Strike Force, that's your 2,000 point matchups, so you can select up to 3 units. It says up to 3 units of legionaries, and then separately up to 3 units of cultist mobs. So, legionaries and cultist mobs in your army. So you could actually infiltrate 3 units of legionaries and 3 units of cultist mobs. And you just go, the whole board is mine. That's wild. Especially when you're taking 20-man cultist blobs. You can take a 20-man cultist blob and ring around their deployment zone, right? And now they can't just move out in the first turn. And if you get first turn, you just bring that ring in, you move it in closer, and they're boxed in their deployment zone. Meanwhile, you've used infiltrate to put legionaries in places where they can't be shot. They're out of line of sight, behind a ruin over here, behind a ruin over there. You've just completely flooded the board with your stuff. It's fucking crazy. That's so good. That's broken. And now let's talk about some of their... I can't stress enough how busted that's going to be in competent players' hands. Being able to do that with 6 units, infiltrating 6 big units, is going to flip people out. You know, if you're versing a Blood Angels player, and it's like, cool, my first drop is this big unit of cultists here, then they're going to probably put a unit of scouts somewhere, and then the rest of the board is yours. Right? You can't go within 9 inches of the scouts they just placed, but the rest of the board is yours. And then they're boxed in their deployment zone. And then meanwhile, you've got legionaries staged in really premium spots, so that turn 1, if you draw cleanse, you don't even have to move. You're just like, boop, 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 cleanse. Turn 1, you're deploying teleport homers with you. Like, it's so good. So they've got an enhancement here. Now this enhancement is pretty wild. So Chaos Lord model only, excluding Terminator Lords. In the declare battle formation step, you can select the bearer. You can set the bearer up in reserves instead of setting him up on the battlefield. If you do so in the reinforcement step of one of your movement phases, you can select one model in a friendly legionaries or chosen unit that's on the battlefield, excluding attached units. The selected model is destroyed, ignoring any rules that are triggered when a model is destroyed, and the bearer is now set up as close as possible to where that model was destroyed, and only within engagement range of enemy units if the destroyed model was within engagement range of those units. The bearer now attaches to that unit as a leader. So it's kind of like the Sanguinor. It's different though, in that the Sanguinor, basically he appears out of nowhere, like he's in reserves, and then you can basically just, and at your opponent's at the end of your opponent's charge phase, you can basically drop him in. This is similar, but it's at the end of one of your movement phases, so you can't reactively do it in your opponent's turn. So it's not quite as good. And then the Sanguinor also has fights first, so when he pops in, he just fights things. So this is more that if you have multiple units of legionaries running around the table, you have your Chaos Lord and Deep Strike, and if your opponent goes this way, you can just go, cool, these legionnaires go in, and they have a Chaos Lord with them. Whereas previously you'd be like, oh, you know, if my Chaos Lord's in this unit, they're going to move that way to stay away from my Chaos Lord. It just means you can't really hide from the Chaos Lord in this detachment. So that's cute. Curse Fang, infantry model only, improve the AP of the bearer's melee weapons by 1, and the bearer's melee weapons gain precision. That's brutal. Being able to get in with your Thunder Hammer and have free precision, that's really cool. And increasing AP by 1 is also really good. Shroud of Obfuscation. Heretic Spells, infantry model only. The bearer has stealth and lone op. That's pretty good. I'm not sure how stealth works, if the whole unit has to have stealth, or if you put a stealth character in a unit, does that unit then have the stealth keyword? I think it does, because it has the keyword. I'd have to double check that. But that's pretty cool. Might just double check that right now for you guys on whether or not stealth is stealth core rules. Oh no, it's if every model in a unit has this ability, then each time you make a ranged attack, it's -1 to hit. So that means that if you attach this guy to a unit, that unit will not gain stealth, which means that he has to be kind of on his own, which I guess is the point. He's got lone operative and stealth. Probably not really that good, because the whole point of characters is to attach them to units in Chaos Space Marines, because they buff the shit out of the unit they're attached to. I could see a world where you take like a Terminator Sorcerer with this, because then he can deep strike in, and he has lone op, so he's hard to hit. And then if people do go to charge him or something, you know, go into combat with him, he's into combat range with him and shoot him, he's going to have stealth. So it makes the Terminator Sorcerer harder to deal with. And the Terminator Sorcerer is probably the best one, because his ability is target an enemy unit, and then everything else gets +1 AP against it. So he doesn't necessarily need to be attached to a unit himself. So yeah, I could see a Terminator Sorcerer with Shroud of Obfuscation. The next one is Soul Link, Heretic Astartes infantry model only. At the start of your command phase, select one other Heretic Astartes character from your army, excluding epic heroes, and until the start of your next command phase, the bearer gains the Psychic keyword and replace the bearer's datasheet abilities with the datasheet abilities of the character you selected. So you can basically put a Chaos Lord in with some Legionaries, run them in, and then if you go, or actually I'm about to hit a unit that's below starting strength, and I would rather have reroll hits and wounds than the Chaos Lord's buff. If you've got a Master of Execution somewhere else, you just be like, cool, Soul Link, and now I go in and I get that guy's abilities. So I think for this one, you probably want to have a broad range of characters so that at any point you can use any one of them. So you might have a Dark Apostle in a unit, and you might have a Master of Executions in a unit, and then a Chaos Lords in a unit, and then maybe Fabius Bile in a unit, and be able to just go, cool, my Chaos Lord who has this enhancement, he can be either a Chaos Lord, or he can be Fabius Bile, or he can be, any one of these guys. That's pretty cool. That provides a lot of utility. I like that a lot. But let's have a look at their stratagems. Stratagems are always the most fun part for me. I always enjoy a good stratagem. So 1 CP, this is a War Gear stratagem. Any phase just after an enemy model with the Deadly Demise ability, excluding Titanic, is destroyed, select one Heretic Astartes character unit from your army that's within 18 inches of that model when it was destroyed. Your opponent does not roll to determine whether mortal wounds are inflicted by their model's Deadly Demise ability. Instead, mortal wounds are automatically inflicted. If that ability inflicts a random number of mortal wounds, your opponent rolls to determine that number as normal. So this is one of those things where it's situational, but it can be absolutely devastating when you pop it off. So imagine your opponent's got their whole army clustered around, like maybe it's an Iron Storm list, and they've got like a Land Raider Redeemer or a Repulsor Executioner or some big vehicle, right? And they've got Tech Marines nearby that are buffing it up. They've got a couple other units that are nearby. You go in and you pop that tank, and then you go, cool, 1 CP, that thing's Deadly Demise automatically pops off. Yes, my unit that just killed you is likely to cop those wounds as well, but both your Tech Marines are, those tanks are, that tank is. This has the capacity to do an absolutely phenomenal amount of mortal wounds for 1 CP. It's not going to pop up often, but when it does pop up, you're going to be so happy that you have access to this stratagem. That's cool. From all sides, 1 CP, Battle Tactic Stratagem, start of your charge phase, select one Heretic Astartes unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to charge rolls made for each unit. Until the start of the charge phase, add 1 to the charge rolls made for your unit for each other Heretic Astartes unit from your army that made a charge move this phase. Okay, to a maximum +3. So what you could do is you could have a big unit of Terminators in Deep Strike, right? And then you've infiltrated all of these Legionaries and Cultists all over the board. And then on turn 2, what you do is you go charging Cultists in, charging Legionaries in, charging Legionaries in, deep striking the Terminators, and now those Terminators are going to get 1 CP +3 to their charge. So now they're fishing for a 6-up charge. That's pretty cool. And that means that your go turn, the turn when you activate everything, is very reliable now. So that's cool. I like that. Or maybe that's where your Warp Talons come in. Your Warp Talons deep strike with +3 to charge, then they kill the thing and they fuck off, and then they rapid ingress, and then they go in and they charge and they kill something, and then they fuck off, and then they come back in. Yikes. That's really good. That's actually broken. Yep, expect to see that one used often. Next, 1 CP, pick them off, it's a battle. That's so good. Sorry, I'm just stuck on that +3 to charge with Warp Talons. Because one of the problems with the Warp Talons, right, is that if you've got one unit, it's fine, because you rapid ingress it, it then charges, kills something, disappears. You then rapid ingress it back in, charge, kill something, disappear. That works really well, but if you add a second unit, you can't rapid ingress the second unit, which means it has to come down in your movement phase and hope for a 9-inch charge. And if it fails, it's sitting there and it's just going to get shot and killed, right? So it means you have to place it somewhere really hidden, really obscured. It's really tricky. Whereas with this, if you go, cool, I rapid ingress one, then we tick over into my turn, I deep strike the other one, this one moves in and charges, a couple of Legionaries charge something over there, and now this one gets 3 inch plus 3 inches, it charges as well, and now both of them kill something and then fuck off. Now you're able to do it with 2. One of them rapid ingresses in to get a very guaranteed charge, and then the other one uses this ability to get a guaranteed charge. You are going to want a lot of CP to fund that, and their enhancements didn't have any CP regeneration. So if you do this, you're going to want to make sure that you're taking tactical, so that if you need to, you can cycle out a card to get a command point back. Very good. Anyway, next stratagem, pick them off. So in your shooting phase, 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot yet this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets a unit that is below starting strength, you can reroll the hit roll. And if the target is below half strength, you can reroll the wound roll as well. So that's pretty good for 1 CP, actually. Like, you can go, I'm going to shoot something small. Like, you maybe got a unit of legionaries nearby, and you're like, cool, there's a knight over there. I'm going to shoot it with the melter gun from the legionaries, do a couple of wounds to it. Then it's now below starting strength, and now my big Terminator unit goes boom and shoots it with everything and rerolls everything. That's pretty cool. Especially when you're getting lethal hits or sustained hits from your Dark Pact, being able to reroll all your hits is very powerful. Coils of Deception, 1 CP. It's a strategic ploy. Your movement phase, just after a Heretic Astartes unit from your army falls back, until the end of your turn, that unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it falls back. So, pretty standard. Fall back and shoot. It's pretty good. It allows you to fall back and do actions, which is kind of cool, or fall back and blast something. You can't charge after doing this, which is kind of suboptimal. But for 1 CP, it's a nice piece of, kit to have in your toolbox. 1 CP, Relentless Pursuit. In your opponent's movement phase, just after an enemy unit ends a normal move, advance, or fallback move, 1 Heretic Astartes infantry or mounted unit from your army that is within 9 inches of the unit, but not within engagement range, can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. So reactive move. So we've already seen this in the previous detachment, and now we've got it again here. Conveniently, they both have different names for some frickin' reason. This is obviously, very, very powerful, especially when you've infiltrated everything up, you've got models all over the board, your opponent's trying to get onto objective markers, you'll be able to reactively move to get more models on there than them, prevent them from scoring those primary. If they're going to charge you, you can use it to move away. This also works really well with that unit of cultists that you've moved up just to box them into the deployment zone. If they move to try to get out, you can just reactively move and finish the screen. So the first unit that they move, they're going to move, this way, and then they enter the move within 9 inches of you, so you're able to then swing the rest of the unit around to box in everything else. This is completely broken in certain matchups. Side note, I wish GW would just, they came up with the whole idea of universal keywords again, they've reinvented the wheel, and then they've stopped using it already. The reactive move should just be a keyword, in the same way that Feel No Pain is a keyword. It should just be... And same with Fights on Death, that should just be a keyword. And then all of these stratagems should just be 1 CP, your unit gains the reactive move keyword for this phase, or whatever, right? Instead of this having to write it out every time. Then we've got Scramble Coordinates. This one's also busted. So 1 CP, start of the reinforcement step of your opponent's movement phase. Select 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, enemy units that are set up on the battlefield from reserves cannot be set up within 12 inches horizontally of that unit. That's also busted. That's so good, because you're going to be able to prevent your opponent from using 3-inch deep strikes to get on your objectives. You're going to be able to prevent your opponent from being able to drop and charge you, because they have to move 12 inches away. They can't charge after doing that. It's absolutely munted. So this detachment is also absolutely fantastic. Lots of different really cool stratagems here. Being able to detonate vehicles and do mass mortal wounds to your opponent, that's really good. Being able to get up to +3 to your charge from Deep Strike, that's really freaking good. That's even really good on something that's not in Deep Strike. Being able to just move something up and then go, cool, I'm getting +3 to my charge. If you end your move pretty close to your opponent, now you're getting a guaranteed charge. And if you do roll high, you're going to be able to swing all the way around behind them, get onto the objective that they're trying to stop you from getting. Really, really cool. Reroll hits against things that are below starting strength, and reroll wounds if they're below half strength. That's really good. If you get a knight down from its 10 wounds down to 4 wounds, and you're like, oh, I need to pick it off, but all I've got left is bolters. Being able to go, cool, I'm going to spend 1 CP, get reroll hits and wounds with lethal wounds. You're probably going to kill it now. with just like a unit of Legionaries bolt guns. So that's really cool. Coils of Deception, fall back and shoot, really cool. Every one of these stratagems is fantastic. Reactive move, 6 inches, that's really good. And scrambled coordinates, that's also really good. So literally this detachment has a fantastic detachment ability, some fantastic enhancements, and 6 fantastic stratagems. That being said, it's not the best one in the book. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Where's my thingy here? I think this one is going to be, probably of all of the detachments, this is going to be the most fun to play. Because if you go, cool, I'm going to start with my deployment and I'm going to infiltrate a unit of cultists to box you in. Then I'm going to infiltrate these legionaries into all these safe spots where they can't be charged because the cultists are blocking the way. So you can't charge me. I'm in the middle of the board and I'm ready to pressure on you. If your opponent can't fly, they're going to really struggle to break out. If you're versing another Chaos Space Marine army, for example, and they've got their Warp Talons in Deep Strike, right? You're going to be like, cool, I'm going to screen out the whole board. You can't Deep Strike anywhere because I've got maybe 2 or 3 units of 20 cultists and then, 3 units of legionaries and a few units of Warp Talons of my own. Like, that's probably what the list would look like. And you just go, cool, I've screened out the whole board. So your guys that are in your transports and whatever, they can come out and they can hit my first ring of cultists, but then I'm going to put the next ring in front of you and I'm going to keep boxing you in there, so you have to stay in your deployment zone all game. Meanwhile, I control all the objectives and I'm launching Warp Talons at you in your deployment zone and I'm just bullying you and boxing you in. That's such a massive problem. Massive problem. And the same happens to World Eaters. World Eaters hate this. World Eaters can't beat that. If they screen you into your deployment zone, the only thing that can move outside of your deployment zone is Angron. And then Angron moves in and cops Warp Talons and Legionaries. It's actually a massive problem for World Eaters. So this one's going to be a ton of fun. And it also has so many cool stratagems that you've got the ability to move in whichever direction you want. So I've always been a big fan of Alpha Legion, so this is a very good one. Let's just have a quick catch up on the comments. What do we got here? Dread Talons, 5 or 10 man Raptors and Warp Talons. So we'll talk about that when we talk about the Dread Talon detachment, but I think it's just 3 10-man Warp Talons and maybe 1 or 2 10-man Raptors. Lexi, can you see if Mo can still join a unit with another character? Like, can you join Chosen plus Abaddon, give them Soul Link, then copy various characters accordingly? That's actually fantastic. Copy Tomi Saw Crack AOC, copy Chaos Lord's buff with Precision Weapon, or his hit rerolls. Lexi's a happy Alpha Legion. So I will check that for you. So let's just remember we're on page 5 here. So let's just see if you can add a Master of Executions. Where are you, buddy? There he is. Yes, so he can be attached to a unit that already has a character attached to it. That's cracked. So for those following along at home, what that's going to allow you to do is you can take the Master of Executions with the Soul Link. So Master of Execution has Soul Link. He goes in with some Chosen that also has Abaddon in it. And now you can use that Master of Executions to Soul Link in a Chaos Lord datasheet abilities. And that means that Chaos Lord, you're now getting free stratagems on Abaddon's unit. You're now getting, like, because the Chaos Lord ability to once per game increase the damage and stuff of his weapon. That's fucking cool. Let's just double check that that's a thing. Where is the Chaos Lord? Is that him there? No, that's the jump pack one. But even that, the jump pack guy, being able to go, cool, now Abaddon's unit is going to have a 6-inch consolidate move and a free strat. That's cooked. But the Chaos Lord, he's got the Chance for Glory. Once per battle at the start of the phase, he can use this ability if he does improve the attacks, strength, AP, and damage of his weapons by 1. So imagine on a Master of Executions. So imagine a Master of Executions in a unit of Legionaries, right? So they're getting reroll wounds. And then he's going to Soul Link to get that off the Chaos Lord. So he's getting +1 to his strength, attacks, and damage. So now he's going in with 6 attacks that are strength 8, AP 3, 3 damage, with reroll wounds, devastating wounds, and precision. And I'm not sure whether he keeps his abilities or if they're replaced. But either way, that's wild. And if you're in a unit of Legionaries with a Chaos Lord, maybe you put the Chaos Lord and the Master of Executions in there together, and both of them go in, and then both of them gain those. There's not much that's going to survive that onslaught. You're going to kill the shit out of something. That's cool. That's really cool. Where are we? Oh, I just realised I was on the wrong screen. I should have been on this screen. My apologies. Replace the bearer's datasheet abilities with the datasheet, so you don't get both. But having a Master of Executions with those devastating wounds, the reroll hits and wounds, and a Chaos Lord doing the same thing is going to be absolutely insane. Yep. So that's really cool. Let's talk about the next detachment. Renegade Raiders. Now, this is the one that most of the people that I know in the competitive space are raving about. This is arguably the strongest detachment. So we've already gone through the 2 detachments previous, and both of them looked really, really strong to me. This one's the one that takes the cake. So I obviously still haven't decided on whether I think this is the most powerful one. I think that the Alpha Legion one has potential to be the most powerful. I think a lot of them do. But by all reports from top players in the field, this is the most powerful one. So this is ranged weapons gain assault army wide. That's your detachment rule. And each time a Heretic Astartes model from your army makes an attack that targets a unit within range of an objective marker, increase the AP by 1. So this is obviously fantastic for a number of reasons. One, being able to gain assault means that you can advance in action, which is really good. But it also means you're just basically gaining D6 inches worth of movement to every model in your army, because you're just always going to be advancing and shooting things. Being able to advance your predators and then shoot means that it's much harder for people to hide from them. And it's also much easier for you to protect them, more importantly. You can deploy them behind a ruin somewhere. And previously, if you were behind the ruin, it means now, in order for you to move around, you've got to move around here and move there, and then all of a sudden your movement is limited, so it's easier for your opponent to hide. Whereas now, you can hide them there safe, and then just advance out and do your shooting. So that's really cool. And then the +1 AP upon when targeting enemy units that are on objectives is obviously fantastic as well, because more often than not, you're trying to kill things that are on objectives, because that's how you win the game. So that's really, really cool. And it's going to put your opponent in an awkward position where they're going to be like, do I want to be on the objective or not? If I go on the objective, he's probably going to just kill me off of it. So maybe I just don't go on the objective. But then if they're not going on the objectives, how are they scoring victory points? How are they scoring their tactical cards? It becomes a real problem. Now we've got the enhancements. So you got a Heretic Astartes model at the start of your command phase. If the bearer is on the battlefield, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result. If the bearer is wholly within 12 inches of your opponent's deployment zone, on a 5+, you gain 1 CP. So it's only on a 5+ unless you're all the way up in their face, and if you're up in their face, you're probably going to die next turn anyway. This isn't great. This is something that you would literally, like I said before with a few of the other enhancements, you would only take this if you happened to have an additional character that didn't have an enhancement, that you wanted the character anyway. You wouldn't take a character specifically so that you can gain access to this enhancement. So if you've already got a bunch of Chaos Lords running around with your units, and you've got an extra 15 points kicking around, or whatever this ends up costing, then you'd probably take it, right? But you're not going to go out of your way. Dread Reaver, Heretic Astartes model only. Each time the bearer makes a melee attack, if the bearer is wholly within 12 inches of your deployment zone, you can re-roll the hit roll. And if he's 12 inches of your opponent's deployment zone, you can re-roll the hit roll and re-roll the wound roll. That's really good. Re-roll hits and wounds. If you're within 12 inches of your opponent's deployment zone, well, you're probably going to be charging into their deployment zone with this guy anyway. So being able to get full reroll hits and wounds on one of your characters is absolutely brutal. It's also not linked to infantry only, so you could put this on a Demon Prince, you could put this on, anyone. So that's really cool. Mark of the Hound. Heretic Custodes model only. The models in the Bearer's unit have the Scout 6-inch ability. If that's an auto take, you're definitely going to take that. Being able to scout 6 inches and then, move out and charge is really cool. It's also worth noting that this is the models in the Bearer's unit. So you can take a unit of Legionaries, put a Lord in it, give him Scout, then put them in a Rhino. Because the Rhino's a dedicated transport and the guys inside of it have Scout, the Rhino can now Scout. And then you can disembark out of the Rhino, go and advance and charge, which is brutal. And then somebody else can jump in that Rhino that had just scouted, and then the scouting Rhino can move off. That's really fast. That's absolutely an auto include. You will go out of your way to make sure you have that. And then the Tyrant's Lash, Heretic Custodes model only. You can re-roll advanced rolls made for the Bearer's unit, and the Bearer's unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. That's also pretty good. I don't think you go out of your way to take it, but if you have a character and he doesn't already have an enhancement, you're definitely going to take that. Now let's look at their stratagems. So, first 1 CP in your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. It's just Armor of Contempt. Reduce the AP by 1. So again, same stratagem in a different detachment and a different name for some reason. But yeah, 1 CP, Armor of Contempt, that is good for the reasons discussed above. 1 CP, Scour and Seize. You use it in the fight phase. 1 Heretic Custodes model from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets a unit within range of an objective marker, that attack has the Precision ability. So that's really good. That actually combos quite well with a few things, because you can have a Master of Executions who has Precision on his profile. You can have a Chaos Lord that you can spend a CP to get Precision, and then you have a unit of Warp Talons that you can use this stratagem to get Precision. So you can do multiple Precisions. So if you go up against like an Orc Horde, you can just go, cool, I'm going to hit your units first turn. I'm not going to kill them all because they're fucking boys with 5 up Feeling of Pain, 5 up Invulnerable saves, but I'm going to Precision out all of your characters. They're all gone. And then next turn, that's when your Chosen come out and your other things come out, and you actually just mince them now. So that's really good. Opportunistic Raiders in the fight phase. So at the end of the fight phase, select 1 Heretic Custodes unit from your army that was eligible to fight in this phase. If your unit's not within engagement range of 1 or more units, it can make a normal move of up to 6 inches, or up to 12 if it's a mounted unit. Otherwise, your unit can make a fallback move. It cannot embark in a transport at the end of this move if it disembarked from a transport this turn. So this is pretty wild. This means that you're able to kill something and then make a 6-inch move to get onto objectives, things like that. But interestingly, it means that if you fail to kill them, at the end of the fight phase, you can fall back with them. Which means if you got Warp Talons, you charge something and you fail to kill it, you can spend a CP, you can fall back, and then you can disappear back into Deep Strike. So that's really, really good. That's such a sick stratagem. Warp charged engines in your movement phase, Heretic Custodes transport, or Heretic Custodes mounted unit from your army that has not been selected to move until the end of the phase. If it advances, don't roll. Instead, make it a 6. That's cool. It's going to allow you to get onto objectives, and because you have assault weapons, remember, you can move 18 inches with that Rhino and then do an action, which is pretty cool. And it allows you to get onto your safe objective easily. That's pretty good, actually. You're going to be pretty strapped for CP in this detachment because a lot of these are really good, so knowing when to use this one versus when to use the opportunistic raiders to fall back after fighting and stuff like that is going to be a challenge, but once you sort of get that tempo right, you'll be very happy with that. Ruinous Raid. In your shooting phase or your fight phase, select one Heretic Astartes unit from your army that disembarked from transport this turn that's not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, if the target of the attack is within range of an objective marker, you can reroll the hit roll and the wound roll. So this is probably the most broken strat they have. You can disembark, say you got Havocs in a Rhino, you can disembark and then target something on an objective, and now you're getting +1. First of all, you can advance on that disembark because you've got assault weapons. Second of all, you're getting +1 AP on the target because they're on an objective, and then you're also getting reroll hits and wounds with the Dark Pacts for sustained or lethal. That's fucking crazy. That unit of 4 las cannons jumping out and getting full rerolls to hit with sustained hits and getting +1 AP on the target, and this is something that's just advanced out. That's crazy. If you have a Rhino underneath a ruin and you're able to advance up and then get plunging fire as well, now like chain cannons are going to be AP too. That's pretty cool. And then also obviously charging into combat as well, so you can use this on something like Chosen, who don't have innate rerolls, just going, cool, Chosen going in, rerolling hits and wounds. Things like Plague Marines, they can take a whole ton of combat weapons, so you can run a big unit where everybody has some kind of combat weapon, whether it be Power Fists or Accursed weapons or Bubotic weapons or whatever. Being able to just go, cool, Plague Marines jump out, they can charge in, and then they can go, boom, rerolling all hits and wounds with increased AP on all of my weapons, and I'm just ripping that unit apart. Reaver's Haste. In your charge phase, one Heretic Astartes infantry or mounted unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, your unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced. If you select one or more units within range of an objective marker as the target of the charge, add 1 to the charge roll. So advance and charge with +1 is really, really good. Interestingly, it can be used on mounted units, and mounted units also gained the 6-inch advance move. So you could take a unit of bikers and basically auto-move them +6 and then charge with +1. And then the bikers now getting that +1 strength on the charge instead of their previous ability means that a biker unit in this could be pretty crazy. But now we're talking about funneling multiple CP, right? We're talking about 1 CP for advance and charge, 1 CP for the auto 6 advance, and then you probably also want, CP for, opportunistic raiders, so that after you kill something you can then move again. I think the main one that you're going to be hitting the spam button on is Ruinous Raid. So this detachment is the one that most people are talking about as the most powerful. I think the fact that you're gaining additional AP on your guys is really crazy. The fact that you're able to scout move a Rhino, so if you deploy the Rhino on the line, and then if your opponent goes first, you can scout move it back into safety, or up into safety, depending on where you've placed it. But if you go first, you're able to scout move it up 6 inches, then you'll be able to disembark your Chosen out 9 inches, right? So you've moved 15 inches, because you've disembarked out your 3 inches, and then you've also got your 6 inches worth of movement, so you've moved 6 plus 9, so you move 15. Then you can make an advance roll, which means you can go up to 21 inches, and then charge with +1 to charge if the target's on an objective. That's so fast. That's almost World Eaters level fast. And, that's pretty hard to stop as well, so I really like that. I think that's a really powerful strategy. I think, and then obviously those guys are also going to be able to get reroll hits and wounds against whatever they charge. That's brutal. Being able to reactively move with your warp talons, which means even if you fail to kill your opponent, you can actually always just pick up those warp talons. Maybe you only need 1 or 2 units of them so that you don't need to worry about redundancy. Yeah, this detachment is really, really good. I can see why people think it's the best, and they're probably right. I just like to, this early in the piece, I like to stay a little bit more open-minded to discuss, the other potential things. So let's have a look at some more comments. Soul Link on Mop plus Possessed to copy Mo passive and gain reroll hits on the Possessed. That's really good. I think that Soul Link is going to be one of those things that we're going to find so many different really, really cool combos for. The only other mounted unit for the strats is the Lord Discordant, and he's still probably too expensive. I agree. That being said, when that Lord Discordant's getting additional AP, getting reroll hits and wounds, getting an auto 6 advance and an advance and charge, being able to advance and shoot with his flamer as well, like, that one guy could pop off in one turn. With a little bit of strat support, he could do some serious damage. So, I think there's a world where he's really good. Souling for stealing the Dark Commune's ability, giving it to Legionaries, Chosen, Possessed, or Terminators. Fuck! That's so good! Oh god, I need to look at that. Okay. So I'm on page 8. Let's have a look at that. Let's flick it over to this screen. Let's have a look at that. Dark Commune. Where are you? There you are. So, while this unit contain... that's interesting. So if it steals that, I don't know if he would gain that, because the Dark Commune contains the Cult Demagogue. But if you're stealing his abilities for a Master of Execution that's attached to Legionaries, that unit would now have this ability. And that unit doesn't contain a Cult Demagogue. So actually, unfortunately, I don't think it works. But giving a 5-up invulnerable save to them and advance and charge with +1 to hit and +1 to wound, that would have been insane. But unfortunately, I don't think it works. I think that's something that might require an FAQ to check. But unfortunately, I don't think that's how it's going to work. I think the fact that it specifies you require a Cult Demagogue in the unit means that you're not going to get that ability. But I think this is one of those ones where we're just going to want to sit there and go through every single character and think, which ones do you want to have the ability to move that detachment around, because you can add certain characters that you like. For example, the Jump Pack Raptor Lord, right? You can't normally attach him to Legionaries, but using this you can get his ability in Legionaries. So I think there's going to be a lot of utility in picking characters that can't traditionally attach to each other and attaching them, like getting +1 to wound on your Terminators, because you've got a Terminator Lord in there and you've got a Dark Apostle somewhere else, right? Being able to go, cool, boom, go in. Things like that. It's going to be pretty wild. The 6-inch consolidate move on Terminators is fucking wild. So I think there's going to be a few things like that. But I look forward to continuing the conversation with you guys and seeing what we can cook up. So, what do we got here? Alexi 157 has just said the same thing I said about the Dark Commune ability not working. Was this stream announced on Discord? I didn't see it. Yeah, it was. I announced it on the 2 Blog for the Bloodgod channels, also on the Facebook, also on YouTube. So I did my best to make sure everyone knew it was happening. But if you missed it, just continue watching from now, and then you can always catch the stuff that you missed when it goes up after the stream. Deceptors have tricks for days. Raiders have speed, power, and some tricks. Veterans have a little bit of everything so far. Yep, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything that you guys said in the comments there, so that's good to know that we're all on the same page. So let's get over here now and look at the Dread Talons detachment. So their detachment rule is in the battle shock step of your opponent's command phase. If an enemy unit's below starting strength and within 12 inches of one or more Heretic Astartes units, it must take a battle shock test. Each time a unit within 12 inches of one or more Heretic Astartes units takes a battle shock test, subtract 1 from the result, and units can't be they don't have to take multiple battle shock tests, so it's just the one. This, on face value, it sounds kind of underwhelming, because it's the same as the Chaos Knights one, and the Chaos Knights it's relatively underwhelming. However, in the Chaos Space Marines, this is a little bit different, because we have lots of ways of giving them neg-1 to their leadership for battle shock tests, and we also have lots of ways of just inflicting battle shock tests on them. So you could use this and spend the majority of the game with the most of your opponent's army battle shocked, which is actually devastating, because it means that all of their stratagems they can't use. It means they're all OC0, which means you're able to just bully them off the board. You're able to just go, cool, I've got one guy on the board over here. Like, what are you going to do? You know? That's really, really cool. And basically what you're going to want to do to play this is you're going to want a big unit of raptors that can go in, because the raptors have an aura of Neg 1 leadership, so you want to send the raptors in to make sure that most of their army is within range of that aura, big unit of raptors. And then you're going to want to shoot and take a couple of wounds off of everything in their army. And that way it's going to tick over into their command phase, and they're going to have to battle shock test everything. That's really, really cool. But as for detachment rules, it's possibly not the strongest one we have. Then enhancement-wise, we've got Knight Shroud, Chaos Lord model only, excluding Terminator models in the Bearer's unit have the stealth ability. So that's better than the previous one. So the previous one was the model itself gains stealth and lone up, whereas this one is the entire Bearer's unit gains stealth. So you're probably going to take this if you can. Being able to have neg 1 to hit on a unit is really cool. Then you've got Willbreaker, Heretic Astartes model only. In the fight phase, after the bearer has made its attack, select one enemy unit that was hit by one or more of those attacks, and that unit must take a battle shock test. So this is what I'm talking, there's multiple ways to inflict those battle shock tests. However, and I said this before, but it's in the fight phase, which is the worst possible time to be inflicting battle shock tests on people, because it goes straight into their command phase after that, and they recover immediately. So unless you're planning on lining up multiple charges, and you're trying to avoid their defensive stratagems, it's not great. Warp Fueled Thrusters, Chaos Jump Pack Lord only. At the end of your opponent's turn, if the bearer's unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, you can remove the bearer from the battlefield and place it in strategic reserves. So you can take a Jump Pack Lord and he can fulfill the role of like a Calidus assassin. You can just sit him on the back of your thing and pick him up each turn, potentially drop him in for a behind enemy lines, potentially drop him in for a deploy teleport homers. If you pick him up and then you draw cleanse, you can go, cool, I'm just going to drop him over there and cleanse. Like, it gives him massive speed. Or you can put him in with a big unit and use him as aggressive. So you can pick him up at the end of your opponent's first turn and then drop them in your first turn if you go second, which means that you're going to be able to do big turn 1 charges and things like that. It's cute. I like it. It's also worth noting that it says you remove him and place him into strategic reserves. It doesn't say they have to come down immediately after, which means you could take a unit and pick it up, and now you have it for turns 4 and 5 when you normally can't deep strike. So being able to have that hold it over your opponent, and they have to spend the entire game screening that unit out, is quite good. Eater of Dread, Heretic Astartes model only. At the start of your command phase, if the bearer is on the battlefield, roll a d6, adding 1 to the result for each battle-shocked enemy unit that is on the battlefield. On a 5+, you gain 1 CP. Again, this is something that you're only going to take if you happen to have an additional character that doesn't have an enhancement and this is relatively cheap. Then you'll definitely take it. But it's unlikely, because in the early turns your opponent probably hasn't got much battle shocked. So you're just getting a CP on a 5-up, which isn't great. And then in the later turns, this guy might be dead. There's problems there. There's potential for your opponent to not have much battle shocked, so because maybe they don't have much alive. Maybe you've gone really hard in the first couple of turns and you've almost killed them, which means that turns like 4 and 5 they've only got 1 or 2 units left and they're probably not battle shocked. So yeah, this is swingy at best. But let's have a look at the stratagems for the Dread Host. We've got Depthless Cruelty. So in the fight phase, 1 unit from your army that's not been selected to fight this fight phase, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets a unit that is battle shocked or below half strength, improve the armor penetration characteristic of the attack by 1. So getting +1 AP, but your opponent has to be battle shocked or below half strength, is a pretty brutal qualifier. So this is where those things where you can inflict battle shock in the fight phase come into play. So you might charge something with your character that has the enhancement, you hit them, they then have to take a battle shock, and then your second unit goes in and goes, oh, they've failed their battle shock, now I'm going to be able to spend 1 CP to get +1 to my AP. The problem is you're relying on them failing battle shocks. If you have Raptors, it's not so bad, because they're going to be neg 2, neg 1 from the Raptors datasheet, and another neg 1 from your detachment. So you're increasing the probability of failing those battle shock tests, but it's still not guaranteed. It's a very risky way to play the game. It has potential to be absolutely insane and blow out massive wins as you just battle shock your entire opponent's army and then fuck them up. But it's not reliable enough for me to consider this as a tournament, army. Alright, so then we've got Bloody Example. You use this in the fight phase just after heretic astartes from your unit destroys an enemy character unit. Each enemy unit within 12 inches and visible to your unit must take a battle shock test. Again, fight phase, inflicting battle shock tests on your opponent. It's cool, but it's like if everything is just doing that and nothing's really proccing off of that, is it really that interesting? I don't think it is. So I wouldn't be using that too often. Pitiless Hunters, 1 CP using your shooting phase. 1 Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot at this phase. Till the end of the phase, each time it makes an attack that targets a unit that is battle shocked or below half strength, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. This, again, is really, really cool. Reroll hits and wounds is a massive damage buff, especially when you've got those pacts, the dark pacts, to be able to get, additional like lethals or sustained, depending on what you've got. So this is obviously going to be used on things like Havocs, because that's an infantry unit that has serious shooting capacity. Rerolling hits and wounds on those is going to be fucking devastating. The problem is you use this in your shooting phase, so in your opponent's turn, let's say they fail a couple of battle shocks, you then have to make sure that your Havocs are somewhere where they're going to be able to reach the target. Because you don't know, in your previous turn, when you're setting up your game plan, you don't know who's going to be battle shocked or not. It's going to change every turn. You might fail battle shocks on these two this turn and not those two. You head in that direction, but you can't get line of sight. Then in the next turn, he passes on those two and fails on those two, and now you're like, well, I'm all the way over here. So I think it's a little bit risky. It's a little bit opportunistic, right? Like, it's like if you happen to be near something that happened to battle shock, then you're like, yep, sick. I'm going to go in and I'm going to destroy it. Relentless Terror, 1 CP in your movement phase, just after Heretic Astartes unit from your army falls back. That you target an infantry unit, and until the end of the turn, the unit is able to declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. So we've got fallback and shoot in one detachment, we've got fallback and charge in another. Fallback and charge I think is better, because it allows you to like go in, charge a rhino. If you don't kill it and they go, cool, I'm going to leave my rhino there and keep you tied in combat, it's like, no, next turn I'm falling back from the rhino and I'm charging this stuff even deeper into your lines. That's really, really good. Yeah, I like that. That's probably the best stratagem they have so far. Screaming Descent, reinforcement step of your movement phase in the second battle round onwards. 1 Heretic Astartes jump pack unit from your army that resides from reserves can set up anywhere on the battlefield more than 3 inches horizontally from enemy units, but until the end of the turn is not eligible to declare a charge. It's like 1 enemy infantry or mounted unit that's within 6 inches and visible to that unit must take a battle shock test. So this is good. Doing a battle shock test in your opponent in your movement phase, being able to go, cool, I drop down in my movement phase, you have to take a battle shock test. If this is on a unit of Raptors, that's going to be at -2. So you select 1 enemy unit, go, cool, take a -2 battle shock test, and if they fail, you're then able to use your other stratagems, Pitiless Hunters, to get reroll hits and wounds against them with your Havocs that have popped out. That's much better, timing-wise, for when you can do the battle shock test to them. But again, if they pass their battle shock test, now you've set up a play that's not going to work. So it's a bit risky. The 3-inch deep strike though is really good, because it's just going to allow you to block in your opponent in your turn. You just go, cool, I'm deep striking here. I'm blocked you in. You can't now. If you want to charge that thing over there, you need to move all the way around. That's a real pain. That's really good. And you can also take objectives with it. So, Merciless Pursuit. At the end of your opponent's movement phase, 1 Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that's not within engagement range of 1 or more units. Select 1 enemy unit that fell back this turn and is within 6 inches of your unit. Your unit can declare a charge as if it were your charge phase. When doing so, you can only select that enemy unit as the target of the charge, and only if it's an eligible target. Note that even if this charge is successful, your unit does not receive the charge bonus this turn. So that stratagem there is the main thing that I think makes this detachment interesting. Being able to go, cool, I've got a unit of 10 Terminators, right? Big, powerful unit, right? Maybe you've got Abaddon in there as well, right? You've really stacked this unit up. And then being able to go, cool, I'm going to rapid ingress it. Then in my turn, I'm somewhere safe, right? Your opponent can't kill it. Then somewhere safe. And then in your turn, you move out, you charge something, you go deep, you wrap as close around it as possible, right? But you fight as many other things as possible, right? So you do a big multi-charge, you tag a bunch of different stuff, or maybe you've charged one unit here and then you put yourself within 3 inches of, whatever other vehicle they've got so that they can tag it. You kill the thing, you tag something that's got a 6-inch move characteristic. Now, in their turn, they either have to stay in combat with Abaddon's Terminator unit, which nobody wants to do, or if they fall back so that they can shoot you, you are then going to spend 1 CP to chase them down. And as long as you position it so that their 6-inch move isn't sufficient to have them end 6 inches away from you, right? And all you have to do that is be slightly past their base. So you have one guy in base contact, and then one guy slightly past it on either side. And now when they fall, even if they fall straight back in a straight line, they're still going to end that move within 6 inches of you. So you go, cool, I'm going to tag that thing. Now, when they fall back so that they can shoot Abaddon's unit, you can then spend 1 CP, make a charge roll, and as long as you roll a 5 or higher on 2d6, you're going to be able to jump in there and tag them, and then they can't shoot you. So basically, you can use this to make Abaddon's Terminator unit unshootable, which is pretty wild, especially if you combo this with Raptor units that are coming in and hitting things and then disappearing. So they can't shoot your your Warp Talons. They can't shoot your Warp Talons, and then they also can't shoot Abaddon's unit. This just absolutely shuts so many people down. If you're versing Guard, you go, cool, I'm going to charge this tank, blow that up, and then pile into the Bullgren. Now the Bullgren, they go to move away and you follow them, so they can't do that. If they stay in combat, they're going to kill a couple of Terminators and then get clapped, and then it's going to tick over into your turn, and you're going to be able to move in and do it again. You're going to be able to really just bully the crap out of people with this stratagem. This stratagem, in my opinion, makes the entire detachment. All of the other detachments are stratagems are a bit meh, and the detachment rule is a bit meh. So a lot of this detachment, you're reading through it and you're like, yeah, cool, I battle shock you, whoa, like it's not that impressive. But this stratagem is very impressive. And it's also worth noting that this stratagem, the downside to this stratagem actually is if you have battle shocked that unit and they go to fall back, and they fail their desperate breakout, they're now going to disappear, which means you can't use this stratagem. So it actually has a bit of a counterplay in a way. You almost don't want to battle shock that unit because you don't want it to have to take a desperate breakout test. So that's pretty interesting. Just checking the comments before we move on to the next detachment. We've got Deceptors have tricks for days. Oh, we talked about that one. 3 Lords of Skulls and Vashtor. That goes in the Forged detachment for sure. Getting 1 CP on a 5+ every turn for 15 points, what I assume it costs, is great in my opinion. It's yes and no. So obviously for 15 points, if that's all it costs, and like I said, if you already have a character and he doesn't have an enhancement, then absolutely for 15 points. But if you're taking a character specifically so that you gain access to this thing, it's not a 15-point investment, it's like a 115-point investment. And that isn't going to work on the turn in which you would discard a secondary. So let's say you draw Investigate Signals and you're like, well, I can't achieve that. Or maybe you draw Bring It Down and they don't have any tanks. And you're like, cool, I'm just going to discard that card and I'm going to generate a CP anyway. Then this relic doesn't matter anymore. So the window in which this is relevant is actually quite narrow. So because it's, first of all, it's only happening on a 5-up, so that's narrow. And then you narrow that further by saying that some of the time you're going to have generated a CP from a different source, which means that it's narrowed further. Then there's the world where that character is dead from various reasons, narrowed even further. It's actually just very rare that this is going to come up. That's my thoughts. So it's like, absolutely, if you've already got a Chaos Lord because you wanted to be able to pump those Legionaries up, and he doesn't have any enhancements already, and you've got floating 15 points, then absolutely chuck it in there, and it'll probably gain you 1 CP every second game, or maybe every game it'll give you 1 CP. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. All I'm saying is don't go out of your way to include this in your list. I'm going to just check some more comments. Oh, Lexi's chucked another $15 my way. Thank you very much. Have to go now. We'll make sure to watch the rest later. Glory to Chaos. Thanks very much for the donation. I very much appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of it when you catch up later. Wanton Destruction. Raiders look absolutely incredible. I hope it doesn't get nerfed into the ground. I agree. I actually think, and I'll talk about this at the end when I do sort of my summary of the entire thing, but I think that there's a lot of power in here, but I don't think any of it should be nerfed. I think this brings it into line with everything else. So I hope they don't nerf it. Also, Wanton Destruction. Are you going to change your name to like Pacts of... instead of Pacts of Chaos, have something else? Like Wanton, obviously that's from back when we had the Wanton Slaughter, Wanton, whatever, Destruction and stuff, and Wanton Massacre. I think you need to update your username to be a play on Pacts of Chaos. Like Pics of Chaos or something. Anyway, Hope Traded Guard come down and cost a little given what they did to cultists, and it sucks that the Disco Lord didn't get a glow up. I completely agree. I would have loved to have seen a glow up on the Disco Lord. He's such a cool model, and he's so fun and interesting and unique as a model. Like, character that's also like a big mounted thing that's got all these attacks and all these different... Like, he has potential to be so interesting, and then they've just costed him ineffectively to the point where it's like, why? But yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a quick bathroom break and chuck on some ads for you guys, and I'll be right back.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today. Alright, welcome back everybody. desperately needed that break, and whilst I was on the bathroom, I saw a comment here from Wanton Destruction. Oop, I just kicked the camera. From Wanton Destruction, talking about how his username was a play on words from the old Wanton, Destruction, Wanton Massacre, and Wanton Slaughter. I was saying how he needs to update his username to be something to do with pacts of chaos, and he's come up with the Halal Snack Pact, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So going forward, you will be referred to as such, and I expect you to update your username, fine sir. Also, a comment here from Chaos Rumba. He's late to the party, wants to know what we've covered so far, and I think there's probably a few people that have joined in, in the recent minutes or whatever. So it's probably worth updating you guys on where we're at. So basically, we've gone through all of the data sheets and all of the abilities that have changed on each one, and then we've gone through 3 of the detachments so far. We've gone through the Black Legion one, the Alpha Legion one, the Red Corsairs one, and the Night Lords one. Sorry, so 4 detachments that we've gone through so far, and we're basically breaking down all of the different detachment abilities, enhancements, and stratagems. So that's where we're up to now. Don't worry though, this video will be going up live after the fact, so you can always jump in and catch up with what you've missed so far. So we're about, 2.5 hours in, so plenty of catch up to do, but we've still got plenty of work to cover, so we're going to do that. It's also worth noting that I'm having a drink, so if you want to have a drink with me and talk about Chaos Space Marines, then by all means, now's a fantastic time to do so. It's 8:30 in the morning here in Melbourne now, but it's never too early, right? 5 o'clock somewhere. Alright, so I've just scrolled down to the next detachment, so let's chuck that on the screen there. So we've got the Fellhammer Siege Host. Now this is your Iron Warriors style one, and I think this one's also got a strong claim to being one of the most powerful. They're actually really well balanced, I think. So each time a ranged attack targets a Heretic Astartes unit from your army, if the strength characteristic of that attack is greater than the toughness characteristic, subtract 1 from the wound roll. This is very good. Being able to put essentially -1 to wound on the vast majority of your army, provided they're shooting you with strong stuff, which most people are. I think the average strength of weapons is somewhere around strength 5 or 6, right? Like most weapons that you're shooting at people are bigger than the toughness, right? So being able to just go, cool, well, that means that if I'm running Legionaries and Warp Talons and all this toughness 4 stuff, like most of the time you're going to be -1 to wound. Which also means that you can never be wounded on 2+, because if they're wounding you on 2+, then they're higher than your strength. And you're often going to be wounded on 4+. It's sort of like the old Black Rune of Damnation from the previous thing where it was -1 to be wounded. Obviously, this only impacts you if they're above your strength, though. So this actually means that this detachment is going to somewhat prioritize low toughness models. But that's not necessarily exclusively the case. If you've got a vehicle or something like that, one of the main ways that they're going to deal with the vehicle is by hitting you with those high strength weapons. So being able to put -1 to wound and mean that most of your vehicles are only ever going to be wounded on a 4+ is pretty wild. So I actually really like that as a detachment rule. Now let's talk about the enhancements. So we've got Bastion Plate, Chaos Lord model only, excluding jump pack models. Once per battle round, when a saving throw is failed for the bearer's unit, you can change the damage characteristic of that attack to 0. So it's worth noting it is for the bearer's unit, not for the bearer himself. And it can't be on a jump pack guy, but you're probably going to put this on a Terminator Lord that's in some Terminators and be able to go, cool, one attack that comes through, you're just like, cool, it's a 0. And it's when a saving throw is failed as well. So you go, cool, they're hitting you with all these things, you're rolling 4 up, 4 up, 4 up, 4 up, 4 up, and then you fail a save and you go, cool, I'm actually going to turn that to a 0, 4 up, 4 up, 4 up. Very good. Next one, Warp Tracer, Heretic Astartes model only. In your shooting phase, after the bearer is shot, select one unit that was the target of one or more of those attacks, or was hit by one or more of those attacks, I should say. Until the end of the phase, that enemy unit cannot have the benefits of cover. That's pretty good, because what that can effectively translate to is +1 AP when targeting that unit. So if you take that on say a Sorcerer in Terminator armor, he can target a unit with his Sorcerer ability to give you +1 AP, and then he can strip their cover to give you effectively a further +1 AP. So now if you're shooting, Space Marines that are in cover, if you didn't have either of those abilities and you're AP1, they're going to get 3 up saves. But now if you're shooting them and you're AP1, they're getting 5 up saves. So it's a big swing in damage capacity there. So I like that a lot. Ironbound Enmity. Heretic Studies model only. Each time the bearer makes an attack whilst within range of an objective marker, add 1 to the wound roll. So it's only on the bearer, but that's still pretty cool. +1 to wound, put that on something, beat sticky. That's pretty cool. I like that. Iron Artifice, Heretic Studies infantry model only. The bearer's weapons have anti-vehicle 4+, and anti-fortification 4+. So this is pretty cool on a Chaos Lord or on a Master of Executions, because they have devastating wounds with a Thunderhammer or with the Master of Executions Executioner Blade. So getting dev wounds and then anti-vehicle 4+ just means that every 4+ you roll, it's like bop, bop, bop. Yeah, because it's a critical 4+ to hit counts as to wound counts as a critical wound. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot as well. It is only anti-vehicle, and you're never going to see fortifications, so it's not going to work in every matchup. But you now have a dedicated vehicle hunter. Now let's have a look at some of the stratagems. So we've got 1 CP for persistent assailants, 1 CP, fight phase, 1 heretic studies from your army that was selected as a target of 1 or more attacks this phase and has not been selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time your model makes an attack, you can reroll the hit roll, and if your unit is below half strength, you can reroll the wound roll as well. So this is if they charge you, they fight you, and they don't kill you. You can and then effectively use this stratagem to get reroll hits and potentially reroll wounds. That's not bad. It's situational, because often they're just going to charge you, hit you, and kill you, or they're going to charge you, hit you, and kill you down to a point where you probably don't want to spend a CP to hit them back with reroll hits and wounds because you're almost dead. And but rerolling hits and wounds when you've got dark pacts available is really, really powerful. So I can see a big unit of 10 Terminators being quite good here with a Chaos Lord in it, so that you can blank 1 damage, so you can make them tougher. And then also when they kill you down to being below, that 5 model threshold, because you've got a Lord, you're an 11 model unit. So when they kill you down to only having 5 left, then those 5 are getting reroll hits and wounds and going really good. But the Terminators already get reroll hits on their data sheet, so maybe it's not best on them. Maybe it's best on a unit of Chosen or something like that, with just a regular Chaos Lord, but then Chosen benefit less from the blanking saves. So I'm not 100% sure where I would recommend sliding that in. There's a few options, but none of them seem that crazy. Brutal Attrition, so 1 CP in the fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 Heretic Studies from your unit that was selected as the target of 1 or more of the attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time a melee attack is allocated to your unit, after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks, roll 1d6 to a maximum of 6d6 per attacking unit. For each 4+, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So it's essentially the grenade strat, only instead of using it in your shooting phase, you use it on your unit when they charge you, and you do the same amount of damage that you would expect to do from a grenade. That's not bad. It's not particularly great, though, because once again, it's after an enemy unit has selected its targets and hit you. Yeah, because it's after they make their attack, so you can't even do it to stop them from attacking you. So yeah, it's interesting. It's not crazy good. Pitiless Cannonade, 1 CP in your shooting phase. Select 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army that's not been selected to shoot yet. Till the end of the phase, each time your model makes an attack that targets a unit below half strength, a successful unmodified hit roll of 5+ scores a critical hit. That's really good, but it does require them to be below half strength. And if they're below half strength, you've probably already done serious damage to them. You want to be able to use these things when they're at full strength, so that you can get them below half strength. So that's not great. So far, pretty lackluster stratagems here. Point Blank Destruction. 1 CP, use in your shooting phase. Heretic Astartes unit from your army that's within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units that has not been selected to shoot yet this phase. Until the end of the phase, your ranged weapons, excluding blast, have the pistol ability. Being able to gain pistol, that's kind of cool because it means that like you've got a bunch of like combi bolters or whatever. You can turn them into pistols, which means you can shoot into combat. It's also interesting that it'll allow you to do actions whilst in combat. So if your opponent charges you, you're big locked up combat, on an objective somewhere, you can go, cool, this unit's going to shoot all of its pistols in combat, it's going to fight you in combat, and it's also going to cleanse. But again, it's somewhat situational. In order for this to be relevant, your opponent has to have already charged you. So a lot of these things are very reactive. My opponent's charged me and they didn't kill me, so I'm getting +1 to like reroll hits and wounds. Or my opponent charged me and didn't kill me, so I'm going to do wounds back to them with the grenade style strat. Or my opponent charged me and didn't kill me, so now I'm going to turn it into pistols and I'm going to do that. And I think in this edition, in this day and age, expecting to not die when you're charged is a mistake, because most things that charge you have the capacity to kill you, and if they don't have the capacity to kill you, they're probably not going to charge you. So yeah. Steadfast determination. In your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy has selected its targets, one Heretic Astartes unit from your army that it was selected as the target of one or more of those attacks, until the end of the phase, models in the unit gain a 5-up, feel no pain. So that's a really good strategy. That makes things real tough. Those Terminators going in with a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable save, and a 5-up feel no pain, that's really tough to shift. So, big fan of that. Siegecraft. In your opponent's charge phase, one Heretic Astartes unit from your army, 1 CP. Until the end of the phase, each time an enemy unit selects a target of the charge, subtract 2 from the charge rolls. This is not cumulative with any other negative modifiers to the charge rolls. So neg 2 to your charge, that's pretty good. It goes a long way to protecting you from people deep striking on you and charging, because they deep strike, they're 9 inches away and you just go, cool, 1 CP. Now you need to roll an 11 to get in. It's not likely. So people aren't going to be going for those optimistic 9-inch charges. But in my experience, top players don't do that anyway, because if you're risking your game plan on a 9-inch charge, you're pretty desperate at that point. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be aiming for those reliable charges. So, yeah, it's not particularly great. So I think this is probably one of the weaker detachments. The detachment rule is fantastic, but the stratagems in it are all pretty lackluster. I think if you're running this, you're running basically a really tough army that's going to be really hard for them to sort of wound. Interestingly, a Lord of Skulls being toughness 13 means that they're going to be wounding you on, like 5s with most things. If they do get to the point where they've got something that can wound you on more than that, like a strength 14 gun or something like that, and they're like, yes, I can finally do the damage, it's like, nope, you're actually neg 1 to wound, so it puts you back to 4s. And then being able to put a 5-up feel no pain on something big, like a Khorne Lord of Skulls, is pretty wild. Like, that thing's so freaking tough now. So I think that's the direction that this will go. It'll be like either crazy out of the top big units, or it'll be lots of things like your Warp Talons, your Legionaries, your Chosen, your standard Chaos Space Marine playbook, but making them all neg 1 to wound is pretty spicy. I just want to double check if it's only in shooting or if it's in melee as well. It's only against ranged attacks as well, which is kind of annoying. And as you will have noticed, a consistent theme throughout this book and a lot of other books is that reroll wounds is relatively easy to gain access to. And reroll wounds means that, you're neg 1 to wound, it's not that big of a deal, because I get reroll wounds anyway. So going from wounding you on a 3+ with rerolls versus a 4+ with rerolls isn't actually that big of a difference. So yeah, that's unfortunate that the Iron Warriors detachment got a little bit sidelined there. I'm going to jump in and check the chat to see if there's any updates on what people have said. Let me just find the fucking mouse. There it is. So yeah, Iron Warriors players, I think, could justifiably be a little upset by that. Mainly because the stratagems were all lackluster. There was the 5-up feel no pain stratagem. The rest of them were kind of meh. Not being able to reactively move, not being able to get any rerolls to hit or wound yourself outside of being already almost dead, just kind of feels bad. You kind of, by taking that detachment, you're accepting that the only way that I can do damage to you is if you've already done damage to me. And that's not a winning strategy. It's also weird that, like, in order to do damage to them, you have to be damaged, but then you also have abilities that prevent you from taking damage, like being neg 1 to wound, being 5-up feel no pain. So it's like, well, what is it? Is this a suicide cult where it's like, cool, you do damage to me, and then I come in and I do massive damage to you, and then you do damage to me, and we all die? That's what the stratagem for reroll, hits and wounds based on you being damaged implies. That's what the grenade strat, where it's like you come in, you hit me, and then I do grenades to you. Like, that's what those stratagems imply, and an identity of a suicide cult style faction. But then the neg 1 to wound and the 5-up feel no pain, they tell the story of a detachment that's very difficult to kill and is going to try to grind you out through attrition. It's going to go, cool, I'm going to survive forever. And, so I don't know. I feel that the identity of that faction is a little bit muddled. I understand that obviously if you have those defensive buffs on now, instead of them killing you, they actually do just bring you down to half strength. And then your clapback is more serious because you have these abilities that trigger when you're damaged. But it just doesn't feel right to me. Let's check the chat and jump in and respond to some messages. Remember that if you want your message to be read and you don't want me to miss it, be sure to add a donation to it. You can add just $1 to it, and that way it pops up nice and big highlighted on my screen, so I won't miss it, because I know already I've missed a ton of people's comments in here, and for that I apologize. But just to make sure that it doesn't get missed, feel free to do that. What do we got? We got rip autoguns, special weapons. We've got, I really love the Alpha Legion one, but I feel like it will lack some punch. I agree with that in general. I think it's one of the best ones, but I agree that it does lack some punch. Luckily, like the Legionaries, they already get reroll wounds, and if you put Abaddon with them, they're getting reroll hits as well. So you can still make a few units that are going to have that heavy punch, but it's not as punchy as some of the other detachments, that's for sure. Then we've got the Halal Snack Pact said, "Aye, sir. Aye, aye, sir." Sam has said, "You're doing the Blood God's work, man. Glad I could watch this. Glad you could as well, man. I'm glad you're enjoying it." Max said he thought he found the code of the nuclear weapon while seeing this possibilities of stealing ability to the Dark Commune regarding Soul Link. Sad it couldn't work. Yeah, I agree. That would have been, when you somebody said that above, it might have been you. And my mind was just like, oh my fuck, that's going to be wild. But no, unfortunately it does not work. Yeah, it's not totally clear if you can spam every turn a once per battle ability of the Chaos Lord by stealing it. It's also not clear if the Chaos Lord has used his once per battle ability. Can you then steal it? And because this guy hasn't used it, can he use it now? If he uses it now, can he use it again next turn by stealing it again? Because the Chaos Lord hasn't used it yet? How does that work? That's interesting. I think they are going to have to clarify that. My gut sense would be that the Chaos Lord can use it once and the Soul Link guy can use it once. But neither of them can use it twice. That would be my intuition. Because you're stealing the ability. You're not stealing his entire game state. He's used it. He can only use it once. But you're stealing his ability, and his ability isn't, it's not tied to this model. So I think it works, but I could be convinced otherwise. I don't think that's anywhere near set in stone. So we've got Sellers Burgeoner. That's what I feared. Pretty much they repeated the 9th edition with Iron Warriors, durability and not much else. Agreed. This is why there are 7 more detachments. And Chaos Roomba GW doesn't care about your feelings. That's very true. They tend to not care too much. So yeah, all in all, I think that's by and large what I agree with. The Iron Warriors isn't great. One of the things that I do love though, and like this is obviously a design choice by GW, is that they've called them all things that aren't directly linked to the Legion. So you could run the Soul Forged Warpack as your Iron Warriors detachment, right? You can have all these Iron Warrior models and their Soul Forged Warpack, which is the detachment we're about to talk about, and it's way better, way better than the previous one, which was called I've already forgotten the name, Fellhammer Siege Host. The Soul Forged Warpack is way better. So I think that's good, because it means you don't have to be, you're not pigeonholed. If you don't like the Night Lord's detachment, you can just run it as the Renegade's detachment, and it's fine. I did notice there's no Creations of Bile detachment in here, which is kind of surprising, but let's jump over into the next detachment. So we've got the Soul Forged Warpack here. So their detachment rule is that each time a Heretic Astartes demon unit from your army makes a Dark Pact, it can evoke its Dark Contract. If it does, subtract 1 from the resulting leadership test while making the Dark Pact, and until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the wound roll, and add 2 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. So this is pretty wild. +1 to wound on all your demon engines is going to be fantastic, particularly on the low strength demon engines like the Venom Crawlers. They get a lot out of this, because being strength 6 with +1 to wound means that even big vehicles, you're winning them on 4s, whereas previously it would be 5s, and small infantry you're winning on 2s when previously it would be 3s. So Venom Crawlers get a lot out of this, but so do things like Forge Fiends and Defilers. There's lots of stuff that gets a lot of work out of this, so that's really cool. And then obviously, Mauler Fiends get +2 attacks on their melee weapons. The Defilers get the +2 attacks. Even the Venom Crawlers, they've got a decent number of attacks in melee, and they gain the plus attacks from this, and then they can also gain further attacks from their datasheet ability, so you can really get a Venom Crawler just like absolutely popping off. So I really like that as a detachment rule. Then as for enhancements, this is all about your Warpsmiths. So you've got a Warpsmith can get +4 inches to his move characteristic, which is going to allow him to keep up with your demon engines much better. That's pretty cool. This one's the broken one though. Tempting Addendum. Heretic Astartes model only. Each time the Heretic Astartes demon engine vehicle from your army within 3 inches evokes a contract, whilst within 3 inches of the bearer, it suffers 1 more mortal wound as a result of a Dark Pact, and add 1 to the... If it suffers 1 or more mortal wounds, add 1 to the number of wounds that it suffers. So it means you're a little bit more suicidal. However, until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll. So you're now getting those Forge Fiends with reroll hits, which is fantastic on them, and they're getting +1 to wound, so they're getting lots of damage. The damage output on these units goes through the roof. I think you're going to want to put this on a Warpsmith, even though it's not limited to a Warpsmith. I think you're going to want to put it on a Warpsmith so that he can have that lone op, so that he can be in the little castle and your opponent can't just snipe him out. Because if you have this on anybody else, your opponent's absolutely going to be like, oh, I got to kill that guy so that you don't get your reroll hits anymore. So, Warpsmith it is. Forge's Blessing. Heretic Astartes model only. In your command phase, select 1 friendly Heretic Astartes vehicle unit within 12 inches of the bearer. Until the start of your next command phase, that unit has Feel No Pain 6+ ability. That's pretty cool. And then Soul Harvester. Heretic Astartes model only. While the bearer is on the battlefield, each time an enemy unit within 12 inches of the bearer is destroyed, roll a d6. On a 5+, you gain 1 CP. That's not that great, for the same reasons that I've explained multiple times in this stream, is that, rolling for CP is just, it's almost never good, unless you're getting it on like a 2-up, but chances are, there's only going to be some times when you're going to roll that 5+, and in those times, they might be times that you would have discarded a card anyway, so to get a CP that way. So chances are this isn't going to, the window in which this is going to be relevant is quite narrow. So nothing too crazy in the enhancements outside of that one that gives you the 3-inch aura of reroll hits. Now let's look at the stratagems, because there's some pretty crazy stuff in here. So you've got when in your shooting phase for 1 CP you can do a Desperate Pledge. 1 Heretic Astartes demon vehicle unit from your army that has not been selected, just shoot or fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, if your unit evokes a contract, each time it makes an attack, improve the armor penetration characteristic by 1. So now you're going +1 to wound, reroll hits, and +1 AP. That's crazy. The damage output that you can put on even something small like a Venom Crawler is actually quite high. So I like that a lot. Glut for Souls is the next one. 1 CP in the fight phase. 1 Heretic Astartes demon vehicle from your army, excluding Titanic, that has not been selected to fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, if your unit evokes its contract, each time it makes an attack that destroys an enemy model, roll a d6. On a 5+, it regains 1 lost wound after its attacks have been resolved to a maximum of 6 wounds. So This isn't bad. That being said, if you're getting it on a 5+ and you want to get 6 wounds back, you need to roll, 18? You need to kill 18 models to roll 18 dice, which is going to get you an average on 5+ of 6 wounds back. You're not going to do that. So you're probably only going to get 3 wounds back, depending on how many models you kill. It's good, but it's not like crazy good, because not much is going to be able to kill 18 models. Like most of your army is not going to be able, it doesn't have that many attacks, so Lord of Skulls does, but that's about it. And then Demonic Possession. In your command phase, one Heretic Astartes vehicle from your army, excluding demon units, until the end of the battle, your unit has the demon keyword. Now this one's probably the best stratagem because it allows you to take something like a Vindicator or a Predator, make it a demon, and then it stays that for the rest of the game, and then it gains access to the +1 to wound, which is really good. It gains access to, what was the other thing? It was +1 attack, +2 attacks as well, but that's not particularly relevant here. But it also means it gains access to the rest of the stratagems. So a single Predator in the list that you can turn into a demon turn 1 with 1 CP, and then you can move it out and it can do damage with its heavy bolters and its autocannons and its las cannons and all that sort of stuff. Very interesting. Unstoppable Rampage. In your movement phase, you select one Heretic Astartes vehicle from your army that has not been selected to move or charge this phase. Till the end of the phase, each time your unit makes a normal move, advance, or charge move, it can move horizontally through terrain features as if they were not there. So this one I think is really interesting on things like Predators and Vindicators, because they're that small Rhino chassis. You can actually sit that in a ruin somewhere right up against the wall where it's safe, it can't be shot, and then instead of normally what you'd have to do to shoot with it is to move all the way around to draw line of sight. So that means you're actually kind of limited to where you can go. Whereas now you can just go, cool, 1 CP and I'm just going to break through the wall, and now I can shoot straight down line. So it means that you can deploy it somewhere where it's really, really safe. Your opponent can't get it, but in your turn you can just break through the wall as if it was infantry and then blast things. So that's really cool. It's also obviously really cool on things like Mauler Fiend. Being able to charge through walls means that it's much harder for your opponent to screen you out and stop you. And it's also, there's some people talking about using this on a Land Raider, where you basically deploy the Land Raider on the ruin, behind the ruin, so that it can't be shot, and then you just move the Land Raider through the wall, and then you can disembark guys out and charge. That's pretty cool as well. But then you're taking a Land Raider, and I'm not entirely sure you want to be doing that. Now let's talk about Predatory Pursuit. So 1 CP in your opponent's movement phase, just after an enemy unit ends a normal move, advance, or fallback move, one Heretic Astartes vehicle from your army that's within 9 inches of that enemy unit and not within engagement range of one or more enemy units. You can make a normal move of up to 6 inches, but must end that move as close as possible to that enemy unit. So this is a reactive move, but it's like the worst kind, where you have to end that move as close as possible to this, specifically to the enemy unit that ended its normal move, advance, or fallback move. So that's not ideal. There will be some situations where you might have charged something in your turn, and then in their turn they fall back onto an objective, and then you chase them, and now you're also on the objective. But all of these vehicles are like OC 2 or 3, so you're not likely to be taking that objective from them. And because you're making a normal move, you can't end that within engagement range. If this was able to end within engagement range, like a Blood Surge move or something like that, then it'd be really, really good. But because it's not, and it's a normal move, you can't end in engagement range. You can't use it to move away from them. I don't see a massive amount of utility here. And then the last one is Feeding Frenzy. 1 CP in your opponent's movement phase, when an enemy unit, excluding monsters or vehicles, is selected to fall back, one Heretic Astartes Demon Engine vehicle from your army that is within engagement range of that unit until the end of the phase. Each time an enemy unit, excluding monsters and vehicles, that is within engage of that unit falls back, all models must take a Desperate Escape test, and when doing so, if the enemy unit is battle shocked, subtract 1 from those tests. So that's pretty cool, being able to charge this like something in tag 2 things, but it's excluding monsters and vehicles, unfortunately. So you tag a couple units, and then if they go to fall back from your Mauler Fiend, you just go cool 1 CP, and all of the models in those units have to roll dice and die on 1s or 2s. That's pretty cool. You're going to do a lot of damage there, because people aren't going to want to stay in combat with a Mauler Fiend often. But it is limited to being, first of all, only being able to use on one of your demon vehicles. So if you haven't used the demonic possession to turn your Vindicator into a demon, it's not going to work. And also, the fact that you can't do it to monsters or vehicles means that you're never going to be wiping out a unit. Generally speaking, you're going to be killing one or two extra models when they fall back. So it's cool. It's probably not going to be used super often. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that one. So I think for the Soul Forged Warpack, the main thing that we're looking at here is that detachment ability to get +1 to wound. That's really, really good. The enhancement to get a 3-inch aura of reroll hits, that's also really good. It does mean that you're going to end up with a very predictable nugget though, like you're going to have all these units tethered around this one character. Your opponent can very easily measure out where you can move with that unit and what the ranges are going to be, and they can stay outside of your effective range because you're clustered. Whereas normally, if you spread out, you go, cool, I've got a Forge Fiend here, and another one coming off from Strat Reserve somewhere. It's very hard for them to navigate that and make sure that they're safe. Whereas this, they're just like, oh yeah, cool, I'll just stay away from that. So, with that being said, I think this is a solid B tier, maybe lower A tier as a detachment. I think it's got a lot of power, it's got some utility, it's got some fun stuff. Being able to walk through, drive through walls and stuff like that is very cool. And I think if you're an Iron Warriors player, this is definitely the direction you want to head. So I'm going to take a quick bathroom break. I'll be right back, and we'll see how we go. Let me know, the audio is flashing up red on the screen here, so let me know if there's any issues with that. Hopefully the audio sounds fine. But yeah, I'll be right back. Alrighty guys, we are back. I've just got a few comments here to catch up on. Just a reminder to everybody, if you want to make sure that your comment definitely gets read, chuck in a donation attached to it, even $1. That'll highlight the comment and I'll make sure that I don't miss it. So we've got people asking which detachments we've covered. We've covered most of them. I think we've only got 1 or 2 left, which is solid innings. Wolf has said, I think Terminators in Veterans of the Long War is interesting since they get the full rerolls when they Dark Pact. It frees up another unit to take advantage of the detachment ability. I completely agree. So if you go, cool, I've got Terminators over here, they're getting reroll hits, then I'm going to put my Oath of Moment, or whatever it's called, Mark of Hatred, on that unit, and then I'm going to throw Warp Talons in, and now the Warp Talons are getting full reroll hits and wounds. Meanwhile, you've got Legionaries over here doing their thing. Like, I think there's a lot of potential there in that detachment, being able to just access reroll hits wherever it is that you want. And Terminators are a really good example because they have the reroll hits built in, so you actually don't need it on them, which means you're free to put it elsewhere. I agree, 100%. we've got Christian saying, what's the best Chaos Knight that we can turn into a demon? And Wolf has responded with, Brigands and Carnivals would be my guess. I don't think you can do that, because the stratagem to turn things into a demon, which I'm just looking up now, is a Heretic Astartes vehicle. And the Brigands and Carnivals are not Heretic Astartes. They don't have that, right? And when you ally them in, they don't gain that. So you can't turn them into a demon. That would be interesting, though. And then the Walk Through Walls stratagem, that's a Heretic Astartes vehicle, so you can't use that on your Carnivores, for example. That being said, why would you want to when you can use it on a Mauler Fiend? So, yeah, that answers that. And then have we went over the Chaos Bikes detachment? I really like the look of it. That's from Eumenes the Diadoshi. Yes, we have gone over that detachment. I've also released a video specifically breaking down that detachment because it's one of the best ones. So make sure you check that out. And also, if you want to check out my full thoughts on everything, this video will be up after the live. It doesn't disappear. So if you missed the start of it, don't stress. You can always jump in and check that out. But now we're going to jump over to the next detachment, which is the Chaos Cult. I think this is actually the last detachment that we have to cover, so we're doing really good work. I really appreciate everyone who's tuned in for this. So this is the cultist-themed detachment. Each time a damned unit from your army with the Dark Pact's ability is selected to make a normal move, or advance move, or declare a charge, excluding units that arrive from reserves this turn, it can make a Desperate Pact, see below. If it does, until the end of the phase, add 2 to the move characteristic and 2 to the charge rolls. And each time it makes a Desperate Pact, it must make a leadership test. If that test is failed, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds before the effects of that Desperate Pact is resolved. And traded guardsmen units from your army gain the battle line keyword. So that's interesting. You essentially are making multiple Dark Pacts now. So you're taking big units of cultists. You go, cool, I'm going to make a Desperate Pact to gain plus movement and charge. Then when I get into combat, I'm going to make a Dark Pact to be able to... But now you're just chipping away at your unit. You're going to slowly evaporate your own unit over the course of the game. And gaining +2 to the move characteristic and +2 to charge rolls would be fucking wild on like a unit of legionaries or a unit of chosen or something. But on a unit of cultists, like, who really cares? They're not tough enough to gum up the board. Your opponent will just cleave through them no matter how many you have. Especially now that Abaddon no longer provides them with that 4-up invulnerable save. So it's interesting on accursed cultists because they're kind of tough, and also they're getting that blood surge move, so they can move up. They can use this to get even more move. Then if you shoot them, they get more move, and then they can use this again in the next turn to get more move. So they're really fast. But as far as the detachment rule is considered, I don't think that's particularly powerful. But let's have a look at their enhancements. So we've got the Cultist's Brand is a Dark Apostle or Damned model. If every model in the Bearer's unit, excluding the Dark Disciples, is damned, you can reroll advance and charge rolls for the Bearer's unit. So you can reroll advance and charges, but you can't put that on. You can't put that on a Dark Apostle and throw him in with Legionaries or anything like that. So okay, yep. I feel like I'm going to have a pretty dim opinion of this detachment just because cultists and accursed cultists aren't what they used to be. So Amulet of Tainted Vigor, Dark Apostle only. In your command phase you can return D3 damned models, excluding character models, to the Bearer's unit. That's pretty good. Resurrecting models is always good, especially if you're going to be ripping chunks out of your own units using this detachment rule. Being able to restore damned models, especially if you put that on a Dark Apostle and attach him to a... Can he be attached to accursed cultists? I'm just going to quickly check that. I get the feeling he can't. Dark Apostle, where are you? Sorcerer, Lord Discordant. No. Demon Prince. I think I might have gone too far. Oh no, here he is. Dark Apostle. He can be attached to accursed cultists. If you do that, you're not attaching a Dark Commune to them, but being able to attach him to Accursed Cultists, and now the Accursed Cultists are returning D3 models to the unit. Where are we? Chaos Cult. So, and it's D3 models, so you can you can respawn D3 of those big mutants, which is pretty cool. Now you've got a unit that's tough, blood surge moves, and is regenerating models. That's kind of cool. I don't hate that. Incendiary Goad. It's a Dark Apostle or Damn model only. While the bearer's unit is below its starting strength, add 1 to its strength characteristics of melee weapons, Damn models in the unit, and whilst below its half strength, add 1 to the attack characteristics. That's pretty cool. But again, on regular cultists, who gives a shit? This is more of an accursed cultist situation. And Warped Foresight, as if people aren't going to call that Warped Foreskin. Dark Apostle and Damn model only. The bearer has scouts at 6 inches. Okay, so now you've got a potential to have a Dark Apostle with a unit of accursed cultists that can scout 6 inches, then do all of these moves with the blood surge moves and stuff. That's not trash. Again, though, I feel like all of that is meh at best compared to the other detachments. Unless you have a real hard-on for cultists and you really want to run cultists everywhere, I don't think this detachment has anything really interesting. But let's have a look at their stratagems. Maybe there's something in here that we can talk about. Chosen for Glory. In your shooting or fight phase, 1 damned unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. Your unit can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, you can reroll the hit roll, and if you did not fail the resulting leadership test, you can reroll the wound roll as well. So getting reroll hits and wounds, especially on a cursed cultist unit that's going to get +1 to hit and wound if it's got a unit of Dark Commune attached, that now is going to punch pretty hard. So that's interesting. You can run multiple units of those and make sure that each time you charge one in, you can use this, then you can use it over there, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Selfless Demise, 1 CP in the fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 damned unit from your army that was selected as a target of 1 or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Until the attacking unit has resolved all of its attacks, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, roll a d6. On a 6, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all its attacks have been resolved. That's interesting that this is not capped. So it's only on a 6, but if you've got a brick of 20 guys and they charge in and they wipe the unit, you're going to do an average of 4 mortal wounds to them. But there's a world where you roll 8, and then you just boop, they're just dead for 1 CP. And so that's not horrible. We've got Infernal Sacrifice is next. 1 CP in the fight phase. 1 damned unit from your army that has been not selected to fight this phase. Your unit can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, your unit suffers D3 mortal wounds in addition to any suffered failing the result. And until the end of the phase, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons of models in this unit. And if you did not fail the leadership test when making the Desperate Pact, improve the strength characteristic by 1 as well. So again, you're taking damage to yourself, you're increasing the amount of damage that you're taking to yourself here, and you're getting +1 strength and +1 attack on cultists. Not particularly exciting. I know cultists do have a lot of attacks, and when you're using your Pact of Chaos to do a lethal hits or something like that, you're getting a lot of that. So it's but the problem is they just die so easily that you're often not going to be able to bring full units to bear. And it's such a big unit as well, it's going to be hard to get all of them within engagement range to fight. Crazed Focus, 1 CP in your shooting phase. 1 damned unit from your army that's not been selected to shoot yet. You can make a Desperate Pact. If it does, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, improve the armor penetration characteristic by 1. And if you did not fail the subsequent leadership test when making the Desperate Pact, improve the strength characteristic by 1 as well. Again, who's you're shooting them with auto guns, cool, they're +1 AP. Oh, look out. It's not that good. Reckless Haste, your charge phase, 1 CP, damned model only. Until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. Cool. you're charging them with cultists anyway. I think the theme of this is going to be to gum them up with stuff, and then like the ability to fall back and charge fits with that sort of theme. And then 1 CP, Mortal Thralls. This is a big one, so it must be good. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy has selected its targets. 1 Heretic Studies unit from your army was selected as target of 1 or more of those attacking units' attacks, and 1 friendly damned unit within 3 inches of your unit and visible to both of your unit and the attacking unit. Until the end of the phase, while your damned unit is on the battlefield, each time your opponent would make a wound roll for an attack that targets a Heretic Astartes unit, if your damned unit is visible to the attacking model and is an eligible target of the attack, no roll is made. Instead, your damned unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of that attack. Okay, so this is like a human shields situation where you basically, as long as both of them are visible and eligible targets, when they go to shoot this unit, you go, nope, 1 CP, I'll just take it as mortal wounds on this unit over here. That's pretty cool and a good way of keeping your units alive. So let's flick it over to here. So that detachment, I hate to say it, but it's very underwhelming. If a Cursed Cultist were their former strength, where they were resurrecting models, they were really hard to kill, they had all of this power, then yeah, cool, you could run 3 big units of Cursed Cultists and a bunch of regular cultists and just go, cool, this is my army. But first of all, I couldn't imagine a worse army to play. That would be AIDS. That would be really, really frustrating to play. And also, I just don't think it's going to survive long enough to be able to bring its damage to bear, and its damage is kind of lackluster. Like, you're not doing... Like, how are you killing vehicles with that army? And if you're bringing an army where you're mixing in some other elements designed to kill the vehicles, then you're not getting any access to any of the stuff that you need to buff those other units up to deal with vehicles. So, unfortunately, I think they missed the mark here. I would have liked to have seen, like... I don't know how they would make cultists an interesting army. I actually think if you're interested in cultists, you want to run the Deceptors detachment, and you want to just go, cool, I'm scout moving and infiltrating all my my cultist stuff up into the middle of the board, and then I have actual meaningful damage positioned around the table that have access to different things that are going to make them a little bit more interesting. I think if you're a cultist themed player, you want that Alpha Legion Deceptors detachment. This detachment is somewhat lackluster in my opinion. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. We got one more, Profound Zealots. So let's just quickly jump in and check if there's been any comments since the last break. So what do we got? Vashtor is insanely tough in the Iron Warriors detachment. Yeah, that's true. I would feel smarter if I never read this detachment. I'm not sure which detachment you're referring to, but I'm assuming it's the cultist one. I think it's bad. The question here by Spawnman GG: which are the damned units though? Are they possessed or otherwise? I'll double check that. I don't think possessed were. I think possessed were at the bottom of this file. Obliterators. No. Possessed. No. So I'm pretty sure the damned units were just essentially cultists and accursed cultists. I think the cursed cultists were at the bottom here as well. Yeah, cursed cultists, they're damned. So the cursed cultists have damned. Oh, sorry, I just realised its camera's on me, so there we go. The accursed cultists, they have the damned keyword here. But it's just them and regular cultists by the look of it, which is just not good. Like if there was there's the regular cultist there with damned cultist mob. This firebrand guy, he's damned, but nothing else is, and I think that just makes that whole detachment just. When your detachment is focused on buffing the weakest units, it's not good. What you want to do is take the best units in the Codex and buff them to get it to a point where they're actually a problem. And when you're buffing, cultists, it's like the cultist's job is to sit on a home objective and sticky it, and then you don't care. They can just die from there. It doesn't matter. So that's that one. And then the last detachment is essentially the... So this last detachment is essentially the same detachment from the Index, but there are some slight changes here. So first of all, you've got your Your standard Khorne Tzeentch gain critical 5+ to make ranged attacks or melee attacks, and your Chaos Undivided get reroll hit rolls of 1. And then if you gain sustained hits, your Nurgle and Slaanesh gain it on a 5+ in either shooting or melee, and Undivided get reroll 1s. And then it's got, so you can't select Khorne as a psychic keyword, and characters can only be attached to things that share the same keyword. Now, this doesn't specify in here that you can't board a transport with a different keyword. However, I think that FAQ is obviously, that was their intent, they're going to roll that across. So, this codex may have been written before that was a problem. So, Talisman of Burning Blood. It will be interesting, actually, sorry, before I go on, it will be interesting to see how many of the things that were updated in the recent balanced data slate, not the points cost one, the actual one that changed rules. It'll be interesting to see how many of those come across, because I noticed they've updated some of the stratagems to reflect the updated things, but things like whether or not you can embark in different transports, that's not I can't find that in here, so it doesn't appear to be a thing. So that'll be interesting to see. So, enhancement-wise, you've got the Talisman of Burning Blood, which is Khorne, added strength and attacks characteristic of the bearer. Each time he makes a Dark Pact, if he didn't fail, at D3 instead. That's pretty cool. Sorry, guys. Early morning, and we've been on this for 3 hours now, so we're nearly at the end. We've got Eye of Tzeentch. He's a Heretic Astartes Tzeentch model only. When you make a Dark Pact, if you pass the leadership on an 8 or more, you gain a CP, so that's significantly worse than it used to be. It's now actually really hard to gain that CP. Orbs of Unlife, Nurgle model only until the fight phase. At the end of any fight phase, roll a d6 for every enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer, adding 1 to the result if the bearer's unit made a Dark Pact and did not fail the resulting leadership test. On a 4+, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Okay, not too exciting. Intoxicating Elixir, Slaanesh model only. The bearer has Feel No Pain 5+ ability, and each time the bearer shoots or fights, if he makes a Dark Pact and did not fail the leadership test, after you've resolved those attacks, 1 or more enemy units hit by those attacks must take a Battle Shock test. So these have all slightly changed. Now they resolve around you making a Dark Pact test and not failing. And this one, for example, 5 of Feel No Pain is fantastic. But this second part, where it's like, if you make a Dark Pact and you don't fail your leadership test, you can make them take a Battle Shock test, and then they have to see whether or not they fail their test. It's like testing into testing into testing. It's just weird. So I don't really like any of those, if I'm honest. Now let's look at their strats. And for some reason they've changed the name of all these strats, even though they do the same thing. It's like, that's just so annoying. So Eye of the Gods is the fight phase after you destroy an enemy unit. 1 Heretic Astartes character, add 1 to the smooth toughness and wounds characteristics of that model, and add 1 to the attack, strength, and damage of that character's melee weapon. So that's pretty cool. You go in with a Demon Prince and you kill something, and now your Demon Prince goes from, toughness 10 to toughness 11, gets an additional wound, and then he gets +1 strength, attacks, and damage on his melee weapons. That's really good, but again, you have to kill something, and often once you've killed something, you then get killed in return. But if you're +1 toughness, maybe they don't kill you in return, so that's actually kind of cool. That's decent. Eternal Hate, that's the fight on death on a 4+, unless you're Khorne, in which case it's 3+. That's really good. Profane Zeal is shooting or fight phase, Chaos Undivided unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, you can reroll the wound roll, which used to be reroll hits and wounds, and it wasn't limited, so it's lost a lot of its vushpa, but it's good. Skin Shift, use in your command phase, and you can regain up to 3 lost wounds. In addition, if you're Tzeentch and you're below starting strength, 1 destroyed model, excluding character, is returned. Okay, it's not bad. One of the problems is now that Abaddon doesn't give you all 4 marks, one of the main things you used to do is you put Abaddon in a big unit of Terminators, and then he had access to the enhanced version of all of these stratagems. That's not the case anymore. Torpifying Refrain. What a fucking name of a stratagem. 1 CP in your movement phase. Until the end of your phase, you're eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which you fell back. And if you're Slanesh as well, you can do it after advancing. So that's kind of cool. Advance and charge is good. Fall back and charge is good. And Festering Miasma. Your opponent's shooting phase just after they've selected their targets. 1 Heretic Astartes from your army that was selected as a target of one or more of those attacks until the end of the phase. Your unit has the stealth ability. In addition, if your unit is a Nurgle unit, it can only be selected as the target of a ranged attack while the attacking model is within 18 inches. So 18-inch lone op is not too shabby, I believe. Yep, that's the last detachment that we need to discuss. So there's some significant nerfs to that detachment from its original conception, and I think using that detachment with current points costs is obviously, as we're not seeing Chaos Space Marines, toppling the tournament results, that's not particularly wise. I think you want to lean into one of the other ones. That being said, being able to advance and charge with your Warp Talons and then do the whole recycle thing is really cool. So being able to go, cool, I'm going to make them Slanesh Warp Talons, that way they're getting sustained hits on 5s, and then they're re-rolling their wounds, and then they're also able to advance and charge and then cycle using the Warp Talons ability. That's just good. So even though the detachment itself isn't as good as it used to be, some of the units that you can apply it to got better, and as a result the detachment itself is better. So I think if you were to take this, you're going to perform slightly better than you would have performed last weekend. But again, I think there's better detachments in this, particularly the one with all the +1 AP when you're targeting things on objectives and the advancing and stuff, or the Alpha Legion one with all your screening stuff, or the Night Lords one with all your morale stuff, or even just the traditional one with your, Oath of Moment target, getting access to reroll hits that way. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Now that we've covered over all of the data sheets in this book, we've covered off of all of the detachments in this book, so we've got all of the information out there, and we've had a good conversation about it. And I really appreciate everyone who's commented, so we can keep that conversation going, because I don't want to just talk to a camera for 3 hours. I want to talk to you for 3 hours. So very much appreciate those filling those comments, and those doing the donated comments. That's also very much appreciated. I guess I'll round it out now with my sort of overall thoughts on CSM. And I know a lot of people are looking at this going, well, CSM are broken now. My problem is, even with the most broken detachments, like the one where you get plus AP and reroll hits and wounds against things that are on objectives and whatever, right? The problem I see with that is when CSM were at their peak and they were doing really, really well, they weren't winning everything. Their win rate wasn't where Necrons are 2 weeks ago. Their win rate wasn't where we're expecting Orcs to be, going forward, right? Their win rate was good, but they weren't completely oppressive. They weren't untouchable, right? And that was back when you were having units of 10 chosen with a Chaos Lord inside of a Rhino, and they were able to jump out and for free get reroll hits and wounds with Strength 5 AP2 weapons, Power Fists on objectives. And then they were able to get free Armor of Contempt with the Chaos Lord's ability, right? Those units were absolutely busted. 3 wounds each, tough, good units. These new detachments don't bring us close to that level of power, right? They were also getting reroll hits and wounds when they had critical 5+ on their units, right? So these units were brutal, right? The brutality of this new book, I don't think it matches up to what we've seen in the past. And with that being said, I actually don't think that this book is enough to push Chaos Space Marines to the point where they're dominating tournaments again. It's going to push them to a point where they're a realistic contender and where they have some really interesting play, but it's not going to put them to a point where you're like, oh my god, Chaos Space Marines are broken. Which is good in some ways, because it means that we're not going to get a billion bandwagon jumpers that are trying to just game the system by playing whatever the most broken faction is. I don't think that's going to happen with CSM here. I think the main thing that we have in this book is actually just the ability change on the Warp Talons. That is bigger than any detachment. That's bigger than any other change, because it means that we're going to have a lot more durability on those Warp Talon units. So I think that's really good. The detachments themselves are pretty spicy, some of them, but I still think that the original detachment before the data slate change made the Nurgle stratagems lone op 18 instead of 12, you know. Before it changed the reroll hits and wounds to just reroll wounds, you know. Before all of those changes came through, Chaos Space Marines was way stronger than it is now with these changes as well. That's my sort of thoughts, that's my take on it. I still think this is fantastic, and I think that all of these detachments are, by and large, pretty well balanced internally. I don't think any one of them is like, that's very clearly the one that you take, and the other ones don't get a look in. I think the Soulforge pack definitely gets a look in. I think the Alpha Legion one definitely gets a look in. Even the Black Legion one gets a look in. The Night Lords one gets a look in. Probably it's the least of these, but it gets a look in. And then, of course, the Zealots, the advancing and charging and getting plus AP on objectives and rerolling hits and wounds on a turn you disembark, all of those things. They all are very good. But is this going to make Chaos Space Marines untouchable? Absolutely not. So I think that makes for a very interesting and fun codex, and I look forward to spending the next few months deep diving it with you guys, finding combos and tricks. I'm planning to do a masterclass on each one of these detachments where I break down the information again in greater detail with a little bit more experience and understanding, because obviously I got this book yesterday and I've just read it. But I'm going to play a few games with it, get a better understanding of the way it works, and I'm also going to write 1 or 2 lists for each detachment. I might even take that list with that detachment to a tournament and then do a video at the end. So at the end I'll be like, cool, this is the detachment, these are my thoughts, these are my results, and this is the sort of summary of that unit, of that detachment, sorry. And we can sort of do that for each detachment and put together a really interesting little, you know, story and a little narrative for each detachment and see how they go. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. Thank you again for everyone who's tuned in. Let's just have a quick look and see if there's any additional comments worth covering. There's a bunch of people saying thank you. I very much appreciate those comments as well. Couldn't one argue that's due to Eldar? CSM wouldn't have been insane win rates if Eldar didn't exist then. Potentially, yeah. At the end of the day, there are still Marines. Yeah, that's very true. I'm inclining on the Raiders and the Iron Warriors detachments. So, yeah, I agree with that. I think they are just Marines at the end of the day with a little bit more utility in some of their data sheets, but, you know, it is what it is. I think there's some interesting stuff in there, and I look forward to deep diving it with you guys further. So, yeah, thanks again. Thank you, Nucky, for the $20 US donation. Just popped in there. Very much appreciate that. This is, I had to get up at 5 o'clock this morning so that I could take the dog for a walk and have a shower and get ready and then set everything up. So there's a lot of work goes into these, and I've been on live now for 3.5 hours. So it's a lot of work, but I enjoy doing it, and I like doing it for you guys, and I like to hear that you guys appreciate it too. So thanks again. If anybody does want to show their appreciation, feel free to jump over to the raffle. I've got that in the links below. And you can go in there and you can purchase a ticket, which is going to put you in the running to win a set of objective markers and some dice. And it goes a long way to supporting me with what I do. And yeah, with that being said, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And I'll see you in the next one. Yeah. All right. See you guys.
Walk for the blood god.